Hello everyone. Welcome to another part of What If Deku ran an orphanage. If you enjoy the story, please like, subscribe, and share the video. It really helps me out. I did not write the story. The original writer is Kyodon. Please go support them. Now let us dive in. New duds. Yes, I'd like as many invites as I can get my hands on, Izuku said, sitting at his desk talking into the phone. Yes, I know who expensive island invites are, I don't care. I have the money, just get me as many as you can. Knock knock knock. Give me a second, Izuku said into the phone, before turning his attention towards the door. Come in. The door opened and Yami and Shiruka came in. Shiruka holding a box in her hands. Oh, will you two give me just a second? I need to finish this call, Izuku told them. The two nodded and Izuku turned his attention back to his phone. Anyway, how many invites can you get me? That'll do. Just send me the invites and take the money. Izuku said. Now is that all? Good. Well then, goodbye. Izuku put down the phone and turned his attention towards his two children. Sorry about the wait. What did you two need? Well, after that assassin came, me and Yami were worried about what would have happened if Fu hadn't stopped them, Shiruka said with a worried look on her face, with Yami sharing the same expression. Izuku frowned. Unfortunately, he couldn't just say that he would have been alright because he wouldn't have. In truth, had Fu not stopped Knees, then he would have allowed her into his home an instant and she would have killed him just as quickly. Which is why he was taking such elaborate measures to increase the power of their defenses. And so apparently were the children. So we thought of something that might help you, Shiruka said, taking the box and placing it on Izuku's desk. Oh. Izuku was curious as to what exactly this was. He slid the box over towards himself and opened it up. And inside was something peculiar. It was a full-body robe folded up inside the box. But it wasn't any average robe. It was a grim. Since it was folded up, all Izuku could see was the hood, but even then that was enough to identify it as one of Yami's creations. Firstly, the color scheme was the typical black and white that all Grim had, with the fabric being entirely black and there being the usual white bone armor that is present on every Grim. Also, it had eyes. Glowing yellow eyes at the top of the hood and teeth as well. Bone-like teeth at the bottom and top of the hood's opening for the face. As if it were more of a mouth than a hood. Is this a Grim robe? Izuku asked. Right? Shiruka said, smiling at Izuku. We call it the Aegis robe. It's made to protect you in case you're in danger. Oh. Izuku took a second look at the robe. We ran my webs through Yami's Grim vomit and used the threads to make this. I felt like some kind of wizard making a magic robe. Shiruka said, clearly very pleased with her work here. We tested it. It works. Yami said. Try it. Izuku thought. Well, it would be useful in protecting me if anything goes wrong. It'll make me look evil, but I guess that's just the price I pay for safety. Besides, if my kids can handle being judged by their appearances, I guess I can too. Alright, let me go in the room and change real quick, Izuku told them. After putting on the robe, Izuku took a good look at himself in the mirror. The robe covered his entire body head to toe, with the only part of his body exposed being his face and hands. The bottom of the robe touched the ground, but just barely, keeping his feet hidden without making walking difficult. There was also a bit of armor going down the side of the robe, but not much. The upper part of the robe was more heavily armored, with bone armor broken up into small armored pieces covering most of the chest, with a big piece of bone armor covering the center. There was also some slim bone armor running down the top of the sleeves, but just a bit. On his back, there was that same bit of bone armor that went along his spine. Lastly, there was the hood itself. There were a lot of bits of bone armor, seemingly there to protect his head, and as mentioned earlier, there were also eyes and teeth around the front of it. One more thing of note about its appearance, when he put the hood up, it shrouded his face in complete darkness. No matter where he turned, or even if he shined a light directly in his face would never become visible. Meaning that it wasn't because of the lighting, this was simply an effect of the hood itself. Well, this is. Izuku looked behind him at the two kids staring at him intently. Very nice. It was creepy looking, and he would definitely need to keep the hood down if he wore this while talking to people. Of course, he couldn't say that to them. And besides, it was at least comfortable. It was a bit heavy, but not overly so. The fabric was comfortable to the touch, very smooth. And it wasn't hot or stuffy either, in fact, it was unnaturally cool. It was a bit uncomfortable, but he'd get used to it. Great. So now you can wear it all the time, Shiruka said with a huge smile on her face. Forever, Yami added. Eh? Izuku was taken off guard by this sudden proposal. Well, if you only wore it when you felt like you were in danger, then what's the point? Shiruka asked, crossing her arms. You wouldn't have felt like you were in danger when that girl came and then she would have killed you. You have to wear the aegis for it to protect you. That's a good point, Izuka said as he gave it some more thought. Please, Daddy. Shruka begged, giving him the puppy dog eyes with her many eyes. At least wear it until we catch those rotten people who want you dead. It would make everyone feel better. Wear it, Yami commanded firmly. Izuka pondered that. The kids were worried about Izuku right now. Heck, 1A was worried about Izuku right now. And why wouldn't they be? Someone sent an assassin here, probably to kill him. And he couldn't just appease them by lying. He'd already done that before. They wouldn't believe him. Especially because it was such an obvious lie. But if he had some protection, some proof that he would be okay, then it would put the kids at ease. Now he has no idea if this would actually have stopped Nis from killing him. But Yami and Shiruka seem to think it would have, and so would the rest of the kids most likely. And that would be good enough. All right, I'll keep it on until they're caught. Izuka sighed. Yes. Thank you, Daddy. Shiruka said, running forward and embracing her father. You're welcome, sweetie. But Izuka paused. How'd I wash this? Staff meeting. It was nighttime now, and all of Class 1A along with Inko was in Izuka's office. Izuka himself was sitting at his desk, facing them all. And he was wearing the Aegis robe. Dude? Why do you look like a super boss from Kingdom Hearts? Kaminari asked. Yeah, it looks like you're plotting our collective demise, Mina added. Oh, this is the Aegis robe, Izuku explained, taking down the hood so they could see his face. It's something the kids made to protect me. They were worried about me after, well, you know. I still can't believe someone sent a child to assassinate you, Momo said, looking rather sick at the thought. Ugh, it just makes me sick, Mina said with a look of absolute disgust. Children aren't weapons, Shoto added, with a hateful look in his eyes. It's so much worse than you think. Izuku felt his temper rising as he recalled what Fu told him. But that's not why I called you here. As you all know, as the world has become more aware of DOC, OPCs, and my existence, reporters and the like have attempted to come here and ask questions. Yeah, but they not getting past the bouncers. Mina giggled, imagining a group of reporters seeing a Beowulf and noping the heck out of there. Yes, well, we can't just ignore them forever, unfortunately. Izuka sighed. They control much of the narrative and how we're perceived by the public. DC needs to make a statement about things sooner or later. And while I'm not directly a part of DOC, I'm very important to them. As such, DC will be holding a press conference featuring several important members of DOC including the head of the division, Oshiribashi. I will also be attending this conference. But you're still recovering. Achiko objected. I've recovered enough, Izuka said firmly. If we don't speak up about certain things, then the media and the people will come up with their own conclusions. Rumors have already started circling around about this place. Fortunately, Kiba streams are influencing most of them, so it's mostly positive, but not completely. We have to take control of the narrative, otherwise it could lead to disastrous consequences in the future. Are you sure you'll be okay, dear? Inko asked worriedly. There could be more assassins out there. There'll be heroes around, so I think it'll be fine, Izuka said. And also I'll be wearing this, which should provide me some level of protection anyway. Are you about wearing that while trying to improve public perception? Jiro asked. It's kinda evil looking. Well, I won't be wearing the hood, so it won't look as bad, Izuku explained. And to be fair, people are more likely to judge me for being quirkless than they are for wearing this. That sucks. Mina grimaced. Yeah, well, it's unavoidable. Izuka sighed. That and my age are going to be the most difficult hurdles for people to get over. Hopefully, I'll be able to present a good argument as to why I was chosen for this job. While I have stated my disapproval for someone of your age taking on this position, I will admit you've done far better than most people even 3 times your age, Momo admitted. Yeah, man. Even the way you collapsed shows how much work you put in for these kids. Kirishima added. And that was manly as hell. Yeah, it was super dumb but also kinda cool, Kaminari said. No one doubts your capability, nor your determination, Midoriya, only your mental health. Ida said. Thanks, Ida, Izuka said, not really knowing how to respond to that. Well, the conference is in 2 days, so I'll have some time to coordinate with DC about what we'll be saying during the conference. That sounds like a lot of work, man. Are you sure you're not pushing yourself again? Siro asked. It's just a bunch of talking and thinking, Izuka said. And it's like I can really avoid this. Class 1A looked at Izuku, worriedly, seemingly unsure of how much they could trust that statement. Izuka sighed. Look, I already agreed to do it. And canceling at this point would create, let's just say, problems that would cause me more stress and work than it would be to just go to the conference. Understood? Good. Now, I wanted to tell you all that I was going to be out 2 days from now for a few hours. That's all. You're dismissed. Everyone still looked a bit worried but figured there wasn't much they could do about it and left the room. Except Achiko, who stayed behind, looking pouty. Achiko, I know that you don't like this but Izuka got cut off. No, it's just that. Achiko interrupted. It doesn't feel like we've reduced your workload by that much. I still see you working pretty much every day. We were supposed to come here so you could relax. So what's the point of us being here if you're still working so much? Izuka took a moment to take in her grievance before shaking his head at her. That's not true in the slightest. You guys have reduced my workload by so much it's insane. I actually have time to relax for a few hours and sleep for a healthy amount of hours. If I had a normal job, then you guys would have left me with nothing to do and then some, but I don't have a normal job. My job brings many benefits and they vastly outweigh the negatives. But one of those negatives is that my work never ends and much of it is too important to just let anyone do. Thanks to you guys I was able to rest for a while, but I can't do that forever. I guess you're right. Achiko sighed, still looking upset. It just seems unfair that you have to be saddled with all this work and you're still only 15. I mean, I felt swamped with work before, but it was nothing compared to how much you have on your plate. Izuka couldn't help but smile a bit, feeling slightly touched at how much care she had for him. Achiko, don't feel too bad for me. I'm rich, I live in what is pretty much a mansion surrounded by miles of land that I own, I have great friends, one of whom is my childhood hero, and I have tons of kids who all adore me almost as much as I adore them. My life is great, and if I have to deal with a mountain of work just to sustain, then that's well worth it. Even that answer seemed unsatisfying to Uraraka. I just don't like seeing you in pain or exhausted, Achiko admitted. I always loved seeing the effect heroes had on people. Seeing all those smiling faces in the crowd. It was amazing. But I always wondered who made the heroes smile? Who picks them up out of despair? I mean, it wasn't really my main goal, I mostly wanted to become a hero because of my parents, but I'd still like to be the one that makes even the heroes smile. And as far as those kids and I are concerned, you are a hero. And we all just want to see you smile. Now Izuka wasn't just slightly touched, he was very touched. It was hard to keep the tears back as Izuka got up from his seat. Achiko didn't notice this, however, as she had looked down to hide her red face. I mean, maybe that sounds a bit too sappy, but Izuki interrupted her by doing one of the most daring things he'd ever done. He wrapped his arms around her and gave her a hug. Achiko was surprised by this sudden boldness coming from Izuku of all people. Izuku quickly ended the hug and gave her a flustered, red-faced smile. Just seeing you trying for my sake makes me smile on the inside. Ayagapov. Achiko's face was red as a tomato as she tried to stutter out words and completely failed. One day I'll have everything figured out. And I won't be overworked or being used to anything or have someone trying to kill me. Izuka continued, turning away and looking out the window. And when that day comes and I can just sit back and raise my kids and watch them grow, then I'll be all smiles. But that future won't come if I don't build it. So I'll endure all those hardships for the sake of that brighter future. Izuka paused a bit, blushing a bit more as he considered if he was really about to say what he was going to say. I don't know how hard things are gonna get, and you have your own path to go down, so I understand if one day you don't support me as much as you do now. But The teen dad took a deep breath and turned around to look at Achiko before giving her a respectful bow. Thank you for all your support. Achiko Uraraka. Achiko was speechless for a bit, just looking at Izuku in shock for a few seconds before a smile crawled up her face and a giggle escaped her lips. PSH, ha ha ha. Ha. Izuku was confused and slightly scared at this response. You dummy. Achiko gave him a sweet, heartfelt smile and gave him a slight flick on the forehead, causing him to flinch a bit and stop bowing. Don't say things like that as if you haven't done just as much if not more for me. You helped me develop full cowling, you told me some things All Might should have told me a while ago, and of course, giving my parents work. Yeah, I have my own path I have to go down, but I intend to walk that path right alongside yours. We walk side by side, helping each other along our paths. Building out futures together. Because that's what best friends do. IYU. Izuku returned to being a blushing mess, but the smile that came on his face was unstoppable. You really are the best friend I could have ever asked for. Same to you. Achiko giggled. The two laughed together for a bit before calming down. Well, I have to go make some calls, you should probably go to bed, Izuku told her. And don't worry, I'll get some sleep too. You better, Achiko warned him playfully as she started taking her leave. Good night, Izuku. Good night, Achiko, Izuku said as he watched her leave. It would take at least an hour for both their hearts to stop pounding. A pressing situation. The day of the press conference had finally arrived, and boy was Izuku nervous. And how could he not be, staring at the army of the press in front of him, all snapping pictures with their cameras and trying to ask hundreds of questions per second? Izuku was currently sitting in a small chair alongside a bunch of other of D.O.C's important figures. He didn't really know any of them, but they all looked so professional and old. He felt so out of place. Which, to be fair, he was. It was probably so weird to see a bunch of old guys in suits, and in the middle of them was a 15-year-old in a strange robe. Hello everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all on such a wonderful day. At the front of the stage, they were all one was Oshiribashi, standing at the podium speaking through many microphones. A rotund old man that looked like he was in his late 80s. As many of you know, I am acting director of DUC, formerly known as OPCCC Oshiribashi. And I've come to talk today about our recent uprising in activity. The reports barely waited for him to finish before hurling more questions at him. Mr. Bashi, why is DOC suddenly acting now? Why the name change? What reason do you have for hiring a 15-year-old for such an important position? What position does Midoriya occupy exactly? Was hiring a quirkless person some sort of publicity stunt? Now settle down. Bashi told the crowd. All your questions will be addressed, I assure you. Now, first I would like to start with an apology. An apology? Many reporters were confused by this, and theories on what this was about broke out among the crowd. Yes, I would like to issue a formal apology to all the OPCs in this county, Bashi said, putting on a sad face. For years we have languished. With little funds and little way to deal with the issues we were saddled with, we were unable to carry out our mission to help these children as effectively as we could have. Then Bashi turned back and looked at Izuku, signaling for him to come up, which he did, walking up to the old man's side as the director of DOC put his hand on Izuku's shoulder, and he tried really hard not to flinch. That was until we met this wonderful young man. Izuku Midoriya, the new director of the Midoriya Foundation for OPCs. Of just the Midoriya Foundation for short. Bashi continued, smiling at the crowd, who were taking tons of pictures. For years we had been looking for someone to fill a position. Someone who had the drive and determination to provide for and protect these children with a heart big enough to care for them all. And that someone is Izuku Midoriya. Immediately, the press started shouting out questions all about Izuku's age. Now, I understand that he is quite young, very young in fact, but that should not disqualify him by any means, Bashi stated firmly. Midoriya has displayed great courage and intelligence beyond his years and has a work ethic that puts him above many people double, triple, or quadruple his age. Not to mention the children adore him as he does them. As for questions about his quirklessness, that part had nothing to do with his position. The people of DOC believe in equality amongst quirks. Once again, this caused a lot of questions and murmurs to erupt amongst the crowd. Now, I would like to give Mr. Midoriya a chance to speak to you all, Bashi said, patting Izuku on the back, signaling that he would now be taking over. Izuku looked over the crowd, all looking directly at him. He took a deep breath and then breathed out. All right, I can do this. Izuku thought. Izuku opened his mouth, but unfortunately he would never get a word out. As suddenly chaos would break out in the crowd. Once the reports nearly the front suddenly took out a gun and pointed it at Izuku's face. Die quirkless scum. Remove your worthless genetics from this earth. The crowd around the man screamed and gasped, and Izuku was frozen in shock. But the robe wasn't. As the man pulled the trigger, the hood flew up, covering Izuku's head as it switched to absolute defense mode. The armored parts of the hood expanded, covering more of Izuku's body, and suddenly the teeth around the face expanded as well, growing in size as they completely covered his face, but also keeping him from seeing anything. Blam! The bullet fired at Izuku's face, but the teeth protected him and the bullet bounced off and then exploded. Kaboom! Izuku was sent flying back, and after a few seconds of airtime he felt himself skid along the ground, the robe still protecting him from harm until he came to a full stop. Once Izuku stopped, he remained on the ground, frozen. He couldn't even think for a little bit as he had to wait for the shock to dissipate. What just happened? Izuku thought as his brain finally started working again. As Izuku was processing the now failed assassination attempt, he felt someone pick him. Midoriya! Midoriya, are you okay? Can you hear me in there? Izuku recognized that voice. It was Death Arms, one of the heroes that had been sent to act as security during the event. I am fine, Izuku said. He was still a bit dazed, but he was mostly fine. The robe was still in protection mode, meaning Izuku still couldn't see anything. Death Arms helped Izuku off the ground and onto his feet and his shaky legs. Kid, how on earth did you survive that, and what the hell are you wearing? It's a long story, Izuku responded. I really need to give Yami and Shiroku a hug when I get back. Meanwhile, in a high-rise apartment, a man with a particularly long nose was sitting on his couch in his bathrobes watching the TV. This man was Rakia Yatsubashi, CEO of Detnarat and the leader of the Meta Liberation Army, Redestro. News is coming in. After taking a horrible attack at the hand of a quirkless assassin, Izuku Midoriya survived with little to no damage, thanks to the help of a special robe made by one of the orphanage's children. A newswoman reported. Crush. Redestro crushed the remote in his hand in anger, a bit of blackness crawling along his hand, and his eyebrow twitched as frustration, anger, and most of all, stress built up inside him. Another failed attempt. Redestro thought. First, we lose Kiria, and now this. Now I likely won't have another chance to kill him for quite some time. Izuku Midoriya was an insult to everything the MLA stood for. The quirkless were unevolved relics of a bygone age. They should be at the bottom rung of society, and it should be made certain that their genes could not be passed on, one way or another. But yet here one was not only massively wealthy and successful but also in charge of children who were inherently superior to him. He didn't even want to think of how their minds might be polluted by him and his unevolved views. The fact that Izuku Midoriya could only survive these attacks by hiding behind the children's quirks only proved his genetic inferiority. However, the MLA still had higher priorities than this. Far higher. But it was a matter of principle. Izuku Midoriya must die. Redestro glared hatefully at the screen as he saw Izuku Midoriya go into a guarded car. One day he would kill Izuku Midoriya. He swore it. Thinking grim. There was a bit of chaos at the house after the latest assassination attempt, but given how little Izuku was injured, he was able to quickly calm the kids and his mother by saying that he would be staying at the house more and keeping the Aegis on full time. Well, this made them calm down for the most part. Most of the kids had gone into high alert, determined to defend their home if need be. However, Yami had a different approach to this, grim creation of course. So, the next day Yami decided to get together a think group consisting of Fu, Kiba, Kyoku, Kei, and Shiroku. The 6 of them gathered in Yami's room sitting in a circle with Yami himself having a notepad on his lap ready to write down ideas. Alright, well, if everyone is here, then let's begin. Kiba said, wanting to start as soon as possible. Not yet, Yami said. One more. Someone else is coming? Shiroku asked. Who? I don't recall anyone else agreeing to meet us here. Knock knock. Come in. Yami said, hoping that it was who he thought it was. Izuku opened the door and peeked his head in. Yami, your friend is here. The door opened up further and Amai stepped inside. Hi Yami. Your house is big. Yami nodded. Amai. Well, I'll leave you all to whatever you're doing here. Have fun, kids. Izuku said before taking his leave. With Izuku gone, Amai decided it was time to introduce herself. Hello there. I'm Amai Nagai. Suddenly Amai stopped as she spotted Kiba and started staring at her in shock. Wait, is that Lady Kiba? Amai gasped. Ah, so you've heard of me? Kiba asked pridefully, sticking her chest out and crossing her arms, and you could almost visibly see her ego swell. Of course I have. I only discovered you recently, but I'm a huge fan. Amai said, her eyes full of excitement as she rushed over to Kiba. I love your gaming videos. They're so much fun to watch while I do homework, although sometimes I get so distracted by them that I forget about my homework and end up getting in trouble. Well, of course you would get distracted. I am far more interesting than any homework. Kiba smirked, getting up to meet Amai face to face. It is always good to meet a servant of mine. Know that your admiration is most appreciated. As is you taking care of my dear brother. Oh no, Lady Kiba. It was no issue at all. In fact, he was the one taking care of me. Amai said, blushing slightly as the excitement was getting to her. If you don't mind, could we play games together? Why, of course. It is my duty to indulge such a loyal servant after all. Kiba said haughtily. Just know that I won't go easy on you, my dear servant. I am a kind queen, but not a merciful one. I don't intend on losing. Even if it's to Lady Kiba. Amai said with a surprising amount of determination. Ahem. Fu-Fei coughed, getting both their attentions. Ladies, can we do what we came here to do, please? Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to be a distraction. Amai apologized. I was just greeting a fan, geez. Kiba huffed before sitting back down. Fu rolled his eyes before turning to Amai. You must be Yami's friend he made that day when he went to the city. Nice to finally meet you. Hello, new friend. Kei waved at her with a big grin on her face. Shiroku. A pleasure, Shiroku said, giving a nod. Kyoka didn't look at her, not wanting to scowl at Yami's friend. I'm Fu, by the way. Now please take a seat. You can sit next to Yami. Fu told her. All right. I quickly got over and sat next to Yami on the floor. So, Yami said we'd be coming up with grim ideas. That's right, we need to increase the security of the house, so any ideas? Fu asked. I have a few. Kiba said. So I was thinking, one issue is that the grim we have patrolling are far too slow. So I was thinking, what if we made something faster? Like a saber-toothed tiger. Yami tilted his head, not knowing what that was. Here, let me show you, Fu said, taking out his phone and pulling up an image before showing it to Yami. Yami took a good look at the picture before jotting some things down on his notepad. All right, next. Fu said, wanting to keep things moving. I have one. Shiruka said. I was thinking of something more versatile. Like bats with razor-sharp claws and teeth. They won't be threatening on their own, but a whole swarm of them can be deadly. And they'd be small so they can go in places the bigger grim can't. In the skies, on the trees, in caves. And they'd be really loud too, so if they saw an intruder they can alert the seers. Oh, that's an amazing idea, Kei said, giving Shiruku a round of applause. Excellent, sister. A Batgrim is a wonderful idea, Kiba praised. It has a lot of uses. I'm surprised we didn't think of it before now. Fu added. Yami nodded in approval as he jotted the idea down. Oh, my turn. Kei jumped in. So, I was thinking we could do a snake. Fu had to stop himself from rolling his eyes. We already have a snake grim, it's in the vents. Eh? I looked up around the room, now knowing that there was just a snake grim crawling around in the walls. No, not like that one. I was thinking more like a snake dragon. A sea serpent dragon. Kei clarified. That breaths lasers. Can we make something that breaths lasers? Kyoku asked. Yami shrugged. Maybe. We can try. Actually, the idea of a sea serpent is quite exciting. Kiba said with a huge grin. Something that guards the lakes of our forest is an excellent idea. But we should make it fly as well. We don't want someone escaping it by just getting away from the water, do we? Oh, good idea. A flying sea snake. Kei happily agreed. Something that can guard the lakes and the skies, nice one, Kei. Fu praised. Leave it to Kei to come up with another version of a snake. Kyoku added. But now it's my turn. And I have a special idea. Kyoka then took out a piece of folded paper from her pocket and unfolded it, revealing a rather well-done drawing of a small grim creature looking like a mix of a scorpion and a fish, but instead of a stinger, it had 3 bared blades for a tail. This is a sulfurfish. It's a lot like what Shiruku came up with. They're super tiny and can't do much by themselves, but a lot of them can really make someone suffer. They have barbed blades on their tails and they can get really, really hot. Hot enough to burn someone really bad. And if they're all together, they can combine and turn into a big monster and swallow up all the people who want to hurt Daddy. That sounds like it would really hurt someone, I noted, taken aback by Kyoku's enthusiasm. I know, right? Kyoka said, looking at her with starry eyes. Everyone gave her strange looks, except Yami, who just jotted everything down. I apologize for her, she has issues, Fu explained. Hey! Kyoka glared at him, offended by his statement. All right, does anyone else have an idea? Fu asked the room. There was a small pause before suddenly a piece of paper suddenly appeared in the center of the circle. What was that? I asked, surprised by this, as most people would be. That was Mu. Kei explained before waving. Hi, Mu. He's super shy, so he doesn't like to show himself very often. Yeah, don't worry about it, Fu told her, before picking up the paper. Let's see what he dropped. He unfolded the paper and inside was a short message. What about something that can go through the trees? Like a ghost? Can we make a ghost? Shiruku asked. What are the limits of what Yami's quirk can make? Yami shrugged again as he wrote it down. I don't know. With lots of negativity. I can do almost anything except one thing. What's that? I asked, curious as to what could possibly be the limit of Yami's insane quirk. Can't create life or make Grim smart, Yami explained. Tried. Can't do it. Really? Don't Grim have brains and stuff? I asked curiously. Grim brain much worse than human brain. Can only take orders, can't do anything smart. Yami clarified. If only we could put a human brain inside a Grim. I thought aloud. But where would we get a brain? There was a small moment of silence before everyone except Amai looked at Fu. Fu sighed as he realized what would soon happen to him. Eh? Amai was confused. Why is everyone looking at Fu? Kiba and Shiruka got up and walked over to Fu, staring down at him with a gleam in their eyes. Meanwhile, Fu just sat there and accepted his fate. Hey, what are you doing? Amai said as she watched the process begin. Turn around, Amai, Fu told her as the girls took hold of his head. You don't want to see what's going to happen next. Kay grabbed Amai and turned her around, and once the blonde heard the sound of flesh being pieces and bones being broken as well as other unsavory things, she was glad she wasn't looking. A grim showing. Izuku, Class 1A, and Inko were all sitting in chairs that were located in an opening in the forest, one by one of the lakes in that forest, all of them waiting there for something. All right, I think everyone is here, Izuku said, looking around making sure everyone was present. Yeah, why are we here? Jiro asked. Well, Yami wanted to show off some new grim that and asked for approval to use them for house security and utility, Izuku explained. And since you're all temporary house staff, I figured you should be here to see this as well. I see. Keeping staff informed of new development is a very important thing. Well done, Midoriya. Ida praised. I can't wait to see what kind of cool things Yami makes now. Mina said. Just as long as we don't have to fight any of them. I'm fine with it. Mineta added. It is rather interesting how many capabilities his quirk has, Momo noted. It's not simply just power, but also utility. It's potentially the most dangerous quirk here. It's scary, all right. Kaminari agreed. Kid has an army. Everyone please take your seats. Kiba said, running out of the woods. The presentation is about to begin. Right, Izuka said, before sitting down with everyone else. After a few moments, Fu, Shiruku, Kiba, Amai, Kyoku, Kei, and Yami all walked into the clearing and looked at their audience. Thank you for coming, everyone. For today's grim presentation, Kiba announced. After the terrible incident that happened yesterday, we decided we needed new grim to better protect the house. Shiruku explained. And so we all had a brainstorming session. And we created the creatures you see before you. Starting up, we have the saber. Kiba said. A creation I gave the idea for. Then from the trees, a grim saber-toothed tiger ran out, leaping into the clearing for everyone to see. Oh wow, that thing is terrifying. Mina said with a bit more cheer than you'd expect. This creature was made to be quick and move through the forest faster than any other grounded grim. Kyoku explained. No one escapes. It can also climb trees, Fu added. And it's ordered to retreat and get back up if it feels it can't take someone down on its own. It'll chase intruders down until they get teared. Kei punned. So its primary use is finding intruders. An excellent idea on your part. Well done, children. Ida said, giving applause. Good job, Lady Kei. Toru shouted. It's fierce as well. Just like you. Oh, and you too, Yami. Thank you. Thank you. Kiba said, taking in the praise. Moving on, Fu said, not wanting Kiba's head to get much bigger. Shiruku, you're up next. Right? Shiruku then clapped her hands before holding her hand up. Then a small bat-like grim flew out and then perched on Shiruku's finger. This has been named a Ravager, Shiruka said. It can fly around and it's small enough to even fly through the forest or in caves. It'll drive anyone who comes here looking for trouble, Batty. Kei snickered. Yeah, but it's kinda tiny, isn't it? Kaminari asked. Not really sure if the name Ravager fits here. Shiruku did not look impressed with Kaminari's statement and then gave Yami a look. Why don't we show him how these things truly function? Yami nodded before looking at Kaminari. Ravagers. Swarm him. And then suddenly Ravagers flew out from all sides of the clearing and swarmed Kaminari. Ah! 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 I take it back. I take it back. Kaminari jumped out of his seat and started running around panicking as the small grim kept menacing him. Kids, Suzuka said, giving them a warning glare. Sorry, Dad, Yami said, before giving his next order. Stop and retreat. The Ravagers ceased their swarming and went back into the forest, with one of them going to Yami and landing on its head. As you can see, just because they're small does not mean they aren't deadly. Kiba explained. In numbers, they're a terrifying wave of razor-sharp claws and teeth. Lastly, they have one last function, Fu explained. They have an extremely loud scream that can be heard for very long distances. So if they spot an intruder, it's almost guaranteed that we or the other Grim will be alerted. We won't show this now because Ms. Jiro would most likely be in great pain if we did. Thanks for thinking of me, kids. Jiro gave them thumbs up, really glad that at least one of them was thoughtful enough to know not to do this. I really appreciate it. Fu nodded. Moving on, Kei, I believe your Grim is next. Right. Kei bounced on her heels, excited to reveal the Grim she helped create. She hopped over to the edge of the lake. You can come out now. We don't want this to drag on. Just a moment later, something erupted out of the water. What came out was a massive serpent head and a bit of its body. It looked like your classic Chinese, snake-like dragon, mustache, and everything. Only in Yami's colors. It was by far the most massive grim that they had been shown today, was one of the more massive ones in general, as even just the upper half of its body towered over all of them. I was wrong. I'm not fine with this. Mineta shouted as he and Kaminari held each other, shaking in fear. Oh dear. Into almost fainted, this having been the first time she had seen such a massive grim. Did it need to be that big? Shinso asked. Oh wow, that's something. Achiko gave a nervous laugh. Izuku at this point was completely desensitized to grim and how they could look, and looking at this purely from a use's standpoint. So this is supposed to guard the lakes then? For the most part. This is called the sea phylong, Kiba announced. But despite its name, it's not limited to just the water. Kei would do the honors. Yes. Kei shouted with excitement before turning to the sea phylong. Now. Fly. Be free. Suddenly the armor on the phylong's back shifted and wings sprouted out of its back before it took to the sky. Rah! The grim roared as it flew gracefully in the air. Meanwhile, everyone was looking at it with wide eyes, surprised that this thing could now freaking fly. Well, at least it's versatile, Izuku said. Why did it need to fly? Mineta whispered in fear. Welp, at least we don't have to fight it, Jiro said. Yeah, imagine trying to fight a flying snake. Zero laughed nervously. What else does it do? Breath fire. Nope. It's a bit more electrifying. Kei giggled. Eh? Responded the entire class. Yami snapped his fingers and the phylong looked upwards and opened its huge maw. Then an orb of electricity charged in its mouth, crackling with energy before it shot out as a beam of electricity into the sky. This seems like overkill, Tsu noted. I mean, it's useful, Izuku said. Although I don't see us needing all too many of these. Maybe just one. Man, I feel bad for the villain that attacks this place, Sato said to himself. But next we have my idea. Kyoka said. Come out, little fishies. Then, from the ground, dozens of sulfur fish popped out the ground, all crawling in front of the audience. Oh, I don't like, Toru whispered. I don't like that at all. Are their tails heated? Todoroki asked. And barbed? Momo added with concern. Yup. Kyoka said. These are super duper hot. Meaning they can tear through people's skin and flesh like butter. And make it hurt too. Well, that's concerning, Tsu stated bluntly. I really need to get her to a therapist. Izuku thought. Oh god, that's so disturbing. Sato cringed as he thought about those things crawling on him, stabbing him with superheated tails. What a way to go, Kaminari said as he imagined the same thing. Oh, and they can do one more thing, Kyoka said before clapping her hands. Now, transform. On cue, suddenly all the sulfurfish started to huddle together, grouping up until they were an amorphous mass of black and white. Eventually, this mass took shape like a giant tube-like beast with a huge gaping maw. Why do these have to get scarier? Mineta shouted. Why? Why was this necessary? It's really cool though, in a messed up way, Mina said. To be fair, all the other kids aside from Kyoku, Fu, and Yami seemed at least somewhat disturbed by this thing, with Amai actively moving behind Yami. Moving on, Fu said. We have two more. The second to last is something Mu came up with actually. Mu, who is that again? Kaminari whispered to Jiro. It's the ghost kid we haven't seen, Jiro told him while rolling her eyes. Really? This should be interesting. Izuku said. Come out, Yami ordered. Stomp. 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 The forest shook as massive footsteps could be heard getting closer to all of them. Oh, what abomination are they sending here now? Zero asked. Whatever it is, it's huge. And dense too. It sounds like walking boulders. Jiro said. You could say that. Because this next grim really rocks. Kei joked. It's the afterlife of the party. Introducing. Stomp. Coming into the clearing was a massive golem made almost purely of stone. With the only exception being the grim bone mask. The creature was separated into 5 parts. The body, 2 arms, and 2 legs. And the parts weren't connected to each other, rather they seemed to be connected by some invisible force. Interesting, Izuku said, slightly confused. I didn't think you could make grim like this. Oh, the rocks are part of the grim. They are merely an armor. Kiba explained. This is its true form. Suddenly, the mask flew out of the golem and what came out was a ghost-like grim. The boulders fell to the ground and the grim floated down, showing off its ghostly body. This is called a geist, Fu explained. It's like a ghost. It can fly, turn intangible, and possess objects. Not people though. Only objects. This could also be pretty useful. Izuku muttered. Have to praise Mu later when I can find him. Now we have something very special. Kiba said with glee. The brainchild of Amai, Fu, and Yami. Amai blushed. Oh, I didn't do much. Not true. You gave us idea. Yami told her. You helped. You did good. Yami lightly patted her on the back, causing her to blush even more. Kay giggled. Brainchild. Good one, sis. Wait, what? No. Kiba shouted out in horror as she realized she just gave a K-level pun. I didn't dash. Introducing the hound, Kyoka said. The last Grimm to come out of the forest wasn't quite what they were expecting. It was very canine-like. Much like a Beowulf, but also very different. It was a bit bigger than a Beowulf as well as being more dog-like than wolf-like. Its body was also much less armored. In fact, the only armor on it was around its snout, with some bone-like spikes coming out of its spine and shoulders. But the most notable difference was that its body seemed less solid. Like Yami's Grimm vomit had only half solidified while making it. It wasn't a liquid per se, it looked more like melting ice cream than anything. That thing is super creepy, Toru said. It looks like something you'd see in a horror movie. Mina said, giving the creature a good hard look. I kinda like it. You have such weird taste, Kaminari told her. This is likely Yami's most versatile and impressive Grimm yet, Fu explained. You see, up until now we were never able to make an intelligent Grimm because their brains just aren't capable of that. But I had the idea of sticking a human brain into Yami's Grimm vomit and seeing what happens. What happened was this. Wait, where did you get a human brain? Achiko asked. Yeah, please don't skim over that part, Sue added. Oh, we just opened Fu's skull and took out his brain, Shiruku explained. It took us a few tries to do it right, but we eventually got it right. That's fascinating, Izuka said. Ignoring the part where you cut open your brother's head and took out his brain dash. God, this place is weird, Kaminari commented. It's essentially like replacing parts in a computer so it runs better, Izuku explained. Using Fu's brain as a processor, you can make a Grimm much smarter than it otherwise would be. That's actually rather interesting and also disturbing, Momo added. This Grimm can use its intelligence and its special body to adapt to almost any situation. Shiruku explained. Although it is blind, it has an enhanced sense of smell and hearing so it can track people down extremely well, Fu explained. I think the best way to show off its abilities would be to have someone fight it. Anyone want to try? Kirishima raised his hand. I'll do it. All right, please come over here and prepare yourself for battle. Kiba told him. Kirishima got up out of his chair and the children stepped back to give the two fighters some room. The hound and Kirishima faced off against each other as Kirishima got into a fighting stance. Defeat him. Don't kill, don't hurt him permanently. Yami ordered. The hound gave a growl of affirmation before lunging at Kirishima. Kirishima raised a hardened arm and the hound bit down on it. The fake redhead gritted his teeth as he felt the pressure of the Grimm's jaw come down on his arm. It was strong but not that strong. Kirishima punched the Grimm in its unprotected chest and felt his fist sink into its body like punching goop. Ha! The student retracted his fist and looked down at the indent he left in the Grimm as it quickly regenerated. The hound then jumped back before lunging back at Kirishima with its claws, slashing his chest. Kirishima hardened his chest and the slashes bounced off. Growling. The hound jumped back again and paused for a few seconds, seemingly thinking about its next approach. You're gonna have to try harder than that to scratch me. Kirishima shouted. The hound kept still for a few more seconds before suddenly it started to change. There was a sickening cracking noise as the hound's body transitioned from canine to a more humanoid form. As its limbs extended and its physiology changed to one that would walk upright instead of on all fours. Its hands also changed from paws to human-like hands with claws. Lastly, on the side of its neck, it grew gills. Oh, that is so creepy, Kirishima said before he saw the creature lunge at him again. But instead of clawing at him, it grabbed him and held him up to his chest. Then the hound turned towards the lake and jumped in. Splash! Both of them entered the water and then things went silent for a minute. Everyone started getting more nervous as time went on, wondering if they would come back up. Splash! Kirishima was thrown onto land on his back, desperately struggling for breath. A second later the hound jumped out of the water and pinned Kirishima to the ground with one of its hands before raising its other claw, ready to strike him down. Stop, Yami ordered, causing the hound to halt its actions immediately. Mina immediately got up and ran over to Kirishima. Kiri, you okay? You still breathing? Kirishima spit out some water and took some more deep breaths. Yeah, I'm fine. So, what do you think? Amazing, right? Kiba asked the audience. Meanwhile, the audience was dead silent. After a little bit, Izuka got up and broke the silence. All right, everyone, you've seen what the Grimm can do, you can take your leave now. I'd like to speak to my kids. Class 1A as well as Inko agreed because something was clearly on his mind and left to give Izuku and the kids some privacy. Once everyone had left, Izuku turned to the kids. Alright, so firstly I want to say you all did a great job designing the new Grim. Izuku started off. There is a lot of creativity and thought that was shown here, and I'm proud of that. All the kids started looking prideful, happy to receive the praise, except for Amai who looked bashful and Yami and Fu who remained neutral. But Izuku added, we can't just have these Grim in the forest as normal security alongside the Seers and Beowulfs. Eh? Most of the kids seemed shocked and confused by that statement. Why not? Kyoka asked/complained with a pout. Because currently the Grim are ordered to capture anyone who trespasses past the signs in the front. And if they get too close to the house or if they attack one of you, they will attack the trespasser. Izuku explained. They're ordered not to kill, but that doesn't mean they can't do it accidentally. And accidentality killing someone is a very easy thing to do if your method of attacking is shooting a giant laser at them, crushing them with rocks, or lashing them with barbed tails that are red hot. Seriously, Kyoka, we talked about not hurting people. Kyoka crossed her arms. Humph. And Grim aren't that smart. Except for the Hound, none of those Grim would know not to use those attacks on people who would get killed by them. Izuku continued. The Sabers, Ravagers, and the Hound are fine, but the rest are too deadly to use as normal security. The kids thought about it for a bit and realized that Izuku was right and looked a bit ashamed of themselves for not realizing that. Except for Kyoku. Kyoka had no regrets. Look, the Phylong, Geist, and Sulphurfish are great Grim, and I'm sure they can help for Yami's hero work, or as security in extreme cases, Izuku explained. I've been thinking of something called security levels. And some of these Grim could be used at higher levels, but not at level 1. The kids looked confused, unsure exactly what Izuku was talking about. Izuku sighed. Okay, I can only really explain it when I figure it all out myself. Just give me some time and I'll explain it to you later. For now, just hide the Grim away and get ready for lunch. The kids nodded, all feeling a bit conflicted about how this all panned out. The next morning, the kids from yesterday's Grim presentation were called up to Izuku's office with the exception of Amai who had gone home yesterday. In Izuku's office was Izuku at his desk and at his side was Ida, Momo, and Achiko. On Izuku's desk was a big map of the house and the surrounding forest. Kids, come in, Izuku told them. Come here, let me show you something. The kids all walked up to Izuku's desk, looking at him attentively. All right, do you remember what I was telling you about security levels yesterday? Izuku asked them. All the kids nodded except Kiba, who shook her head for a moment, saw that everyone else remembered and then nodded despite not actually remembering. Okay, so the security levels are essentially measuring how bad a situation is and what means we should take to defend ourselves. Izuku explained. It's important to have things like this established. Otherwise, you could find yourself overdoing your security and getting people hurt unnecessarily. Ida told them. So let's start with level 1. This is the state the house will be in most of the time. Izuku said before pointing to the map. Do you see this? This is the entrance to our property. This is the limit of where normal people can go before they are considered trespassing, and thus we can use quirks to defend ourselves. I have signs put up, warning people to turn back. So if they keep going, they either didn't see the signs or they meant to trespass. That means they enter security level 1. During security level 1, we don't want anyone getting hurt. So the Grim used are commanded exclusively to capture intruders without harming them. Momo explained. As such, we decided that the Grim that can be used at this level would be limited to Sabers, Creeps, Griffins, Ravagers, and Seers. As well as, of course, the Hound. Oh, I get it, you limiting the Grim that can be used at certain levels so that way people don't get hurt, but at higher levels we'll use more Grim because the situation is worse. Fu realized. That's right, Fu. Good job. Izuku praised before pointing at another spot on the map. If an intruder gets here without getting captures or shows violent intent, then we move to security level 2, which is when the Grim will be allowed to attack to try and stop them. At this level, we decided that now, Beowulfs, Borbatusks, King Taijutsu, and Ursa can be used. Level 3 is when they're getting way too close to the house or one of you. This is when we're sure that they're dangerous, we need to take them down. Achiko explained. All the kids will be told to get inside and the amount of Grim that'll be used will be expanded, including Bearing Elves, Blind Worms, Sentinels, Deathstalkers, Geists, Goliaths, and Manticores. And then we arrive to level 4. Ida jumped in. It's at this point when the entire situation becomes dangerous and we're willing to seriously harm an intruder in order to stop them. This is when Sulphurfish, Phylongs, Nuclavis, and Wyverns I already started constructing barracks throughout the forest. These will contain most of the Grimm that won't be surveying the forest normally, Izuka said, before taking out a piece of paper and handing it to Yami. Yami, do you think you can make these? Just tell me if you think any of it is too much. Yami looked at the paper and all the kids crowded around him to take a look. The paper itself listed Grimm and the amount Izuku wanted to be made. 50 Beowulfs, 20 Ursa, 15 Baringels, 6 Blind Worms, 20 Borbatusk, 25 Sentinels, 30 Creeps, 10 Deathstalkers, 5 Geist, 10 Goliaths, 30 Griffins, 2 Hounds, 10 King Tygitus, 10 Manticores, 2 Nuclavis, 50 Ravagers, 30 Sabbers, 5 Sea Felongs, 100 Seers, 123 Sulphurfish, 1 Wyvern. This isn't the amount of Grimm I want you to make. This is just the amount of Grimm I'd like to use for security. Izuka clarified. I'd have to count the amount of Grimm we're already using for security, but it would still be well over 100 Grimm. Do you think you could do it? Yami took a good hard look at the list before looking up at Izuku. Need to go to the city more. Absorb bad feelings. I'm sure I can arrange something, Izuka said, thinking of ways to keep Yami safe while he went out. To think we'll have an army that big at our beck and call. Kiba grinned. Excellent. Well, at least we'll be safe, Shiruka said. And that's what matters. Kei added. Kyoko was overall acidified. She would have liked to see her sulphurfish used a bit more, but at least they were being used. All right then, Yami, I call you when we want to make the Grimm. For now, go and enjoy yourselves. Thank you for trying to protect the house. I appreciate it very much. Izuka smiled at them, making sure they felt appreciated. The kids smiled back and happily exited the room to get on with their days. And thank you guys as well for helping me plan everything, Izuka said to the 3 hero students. As a future hero, it's my pleasure to assist in making sure people are safe. Ida said. The same goes with me, Achiko said with a grin. I must also agree with them, but something tells me this isn't the end of the work needed for the security system. Momo surmised. Well, you're right, Izuku admitted. I've been talking to All Might and he said he could get me in contact with David Shield. Wait, David Shield? As an award-winning researcher and leading mind in support gear development, that David Shield? Momo asked. The very same. Izuka smiled at the thought of getting to meet such a famous and important man in hero society. I want to see if I can purchase some security equipment from there. That's smart, Momo told him. Did the police figure out who sent the assassins yet? Ida asked him. Having a strong security system is very well and good, however, it's also important to determine who is it that wants you dead and make sure they're sent to prison. Izuka shook his head. Unfortunately, Niz is still unconscious and the assassin is refusing to talk. No one can figure out his motives other than he's a quirk supremacist and I'm quirkless. But he's not related to Niz, nor did he actually know her personally, meaning he didn't send her. So the mastermind is still out there, Achiko said with a grim expression. Ugh. Can't we just read his mind or something? That would be a violation of human rights. You can't read someone's mind or memories unless you have probable cause to believe it has already been altered. Ida explained. And you don't need to have your memories altered to be a quirk supremacist, just a lack of human decency. Don't worry, Achiko. We will get through this. Izuka said confidently. I promise you. I'm not going to get killed by bigots. I know you won't. I won't let them. Achiko promised. When will you be meeting with Shield? Momo asked. Just before Expo. I got my hands on an invite, so I'll be going there with the kids. Izuku explained. That's still quite some time away though, so for now, all I can do is wait. Well, actually, I'm gonna need to test out the Grimm security system first, but how? Ring ring. Ring ring. Izuku took out his running phone from one of his robe's pockets and looked at the caller ID Nizu. Why would the principal be calling now? Momo asked. Izuka answered the call and put the phone up to his ear. Hello? Hello, Mr. Midoriya, I heard you were improving your security, Niza said. Izuka's eyes widened in shock. How did you dash? Ida gives me regular reports about what and his classmates are doing over there, Nizu explained. Ah, that makes sense, Izuka responded. Well, you're right, we just finished about an hour ago. Why? Would you like to test this system? Niza asked in a tone that sent chills up Izuka's spine, but also made him curious. What do you have in mind? Izuku asked. He could hear Niza grin over the phone. Well, I happen to have another hero course class that could use some experience fighting against varied abilities, Nizu explained. I think we can help each other here. Vlad King didn't like whatever was going on here. He had no idea what Nizu had planned, but as he and his class stood at the edge of Midoriya's forest, he just had a feeling in his gut that something was up here. "Sensei, you still haven't told us exactly what we're doing here," said Class 1B Representative Itsuka Kendo. "Yeah, no offense sir, but you just kinda dragged us into a forest and didn't answer any of our questions on the ride here," Setsuna said, sounding as irritated as she looked. Vlad sighed. "Alright, well now that you're here I guess it's time to tell you what exactly this exercise is." The class looked at him attentively, ready to finally know what was going on. "Your mission is to reach the center of this forest," Vlad explained. There was a small pause as the class waited for Vlad to continue. He didn't. "Wait, that's it?" Kamakiri asked. "That's all there is to this? Walking through a forest?" "No, there is much more to this than or even I know." Vlad sighed. "All Niza told me was that you have to get to the center of this forest. There's a rather large house there, so you'll know when you've reached it. To be fair, it's a rather large forest, so it's going to take you a while." "Well, that is rather ominous," Shishida said with a thoughtful expression. "Whatever Nizu has planned, we'll take it down." Tetsu shouted with furious determination. "Yeah, we will win." Pony agreed. "Keep that attitude," Vlad told them. "But be cautious. If the look of glee Niza had on his face is any indication, then this won't be easy." "Yes, sensei," shouted the class. "So, how long do you think it'll take us to get to the middle?" Setsuna asked. "I have no idea," Kendo admitted. "Sensei said it's a big forest, so it could take almost a couple hours." "Yeah, well, we better run into something interesting soon, because this fucking boring," Kamakiri complained. Now, patience is key. We've only been walking for 10 minutes. Monoma reminded him. "If you start losing your mind before the real test even starts, then you're no better than mutts like Bakugo Katsuki." Sun rolled his eyes. "Unnecessary comments aside, Monoma's right. Calm your jets. I'm sure we'll encounter some opposition sooner or later." Shishida paused as suddenly the class encountered something. Floating in front of them was a seer. "What the hell is that?" Setsuna asked with mild disgust. "I don't know, but stay back," Kendo warned her classmates. "We don't know if it's a threat." "I say we cut it open and find out," Kamakiri said with a smirk as he formed 2 blades on his arms. The seer made some clicking noises and its orb glowed red a bit. "Ugh, creepy." Pony shivered. "What should we do?" Bondo asked fearfully. "Just stay still. No one move," Kendo told her class. Kamakiri groaned with irritation. Nothing happened for a minute, just them waiting and the seer continuing to float there. Until suddenly they hear something running through the forest towards them on all sides. Suddenly they were surrounded by 10 sabers. "What though, are these some kind of saber-toothed tigers?" Cozy Eye asked, panicking slightly at the sight of them. "They're demonic," Ibera commented with disgust as she got ready for combat. "We're surrounded," Rin pointed out as he readied his scales. "That orb thing must have called them." Kamakiri said, "Told you we should have sliced it." "Alright, everyone get ready," Kendo told her classmates. "If they attack, then you fight back. Until then, stay in defensive positions. We still don't know how this exercise is supposed to work." Pony aimed her horns ready to fire at a moment's notice while Shishida activated his quirk along with Tetsu. "I'll take this." Monoma touched Tetsu and Juzo before moving on to touch Korwaro and Kamakiri. Class 1B got into a defensive position and got ready to fight back when attacked. But the sabers never attacked, instead just holding their positions while growling menacingly at them. "They're not moving," Sun pointed out. "I know, but why?" Kendo took a moment to think. "Setsuna, can you get a bird's eye view of what's going on around us?" "Gonna be hard with all these damn trees, but I'll try," Setsuna said as she split her eyes off her body and let them fly up into the air. She looked down and it was in fact hard to see with all the trees in the way, but fortunately black and white were easy colors to spot against green. Setsuna could see Grim coming towards their position and lots of them too. Even worse, she looked up briefly and saw that there was a flock of griffins coming towards them as well. "Shit," Setsuna said. "What? What's happening?" Kendo asked. "They're waiting for reinforcements. They've got lots more of these tiger things and some weird bird things coming from above." Setsuna told her classmates as her eyes came back down and reconnected with her body. "We need to move. Now. Otherwise, we'll be hopelessly outnumbered and surrounded." "Oh shit," Manga said, his head turning into an exclamation point. "Alright, everyone charge forward. Don't try to take them on all at once, just run," Kendo ordered before charging forward. Kendo smacked the 2 sabers that stood in front of her out of her way, allowing her and the others to run forward. The sabers started running behind them and they were fast, meaning that they couldn't escape them by just running away. Juzo, slow them down. Kendo ordered. Got it. Juzo took a second to stop and touch the ground behind them, softening it and turning it to something mud-like. The sabers sunk into the mud and got stuck, unable to traverse the now soft ground. While this was happening, Setsuna had her eyes separated from her body again, and they were looking down on them to see what was coming up around them. We got 2 more coming up on our sides, Setsuna told her classmates. 1 on our left, 1 on our right. All right, my turn. Kamakiri shouted as he ran to the right, and Monoma ran to the left, using Kamakiri's quirk to grow blades out of his arms. Rah! 2 sabers jumped out at them from either side. Slice! Monoma and Kamakiri sliced their heads in half, killing them instantly and causing them to fade away. All right, with Setsuna watching over us, nothing can surprise us now, Tetsu shouted. Yeah, unless something comes from underground, Setsuna told them. Then, suddenly, a few yards in front of them, about 12 creeps burst out of the ground to block them. You just had to jinx it, didn't you? Kurwaro scowled. I got this, Kendo said, enlarging her hands. No, allow me, Lady Kendo, Shishida said. The well-spoken beast enlarged himself and ran down on all 4s like an animal and led a feral charge towards the creeps. Rah! Shishida knocked all the creeps away like bowling pins with his massive arms, clearing a path. Move out of the way. Kendo smacked aside what remaining creeps were around, which let the class run along without issue. Those bird things are coming, Setsuna said, getting her eyes lower to the ground so they didn't get attacked by the griffins. Kendo looked up and saw 12 griffins coming down at them. Rin. Pony. Shoot them out of the sky. Aim the unarmored parts. Rin and Pony aimed upwards and started firing scales and horns at the flying beasts. The attacks pieced the mostly unarmored Grimm, and they couldn't hold against the rapid-fire projectiles, dying off and fading away before they could even get close. Setsuna, find us somewhere that's safe. Kendo knew they couldn't run forever, they'd have to take a break sooner or later. Got it, Setsuna said, getting pretty tired herself. They're doing pretty well, all things considered, Izuku said to Nizu over a video call. Izuku was alone in his office, looking at a seer that would show him Class 1B's progress. He couldn't see everything they did, but he could see enough. I would hope so, the Grimm are only set to capture, not attack yet. It would be very concerning if they couldn't even get past opponents that weren't trying to hurt them. Nizu responded. Although I think it's time we moved on to level 2. Don't you think? I agree, Izuku said before he spoke into the orbs. Increase security level to level 2. Eventually, Class B found a small cave to rest in and everyone sat down to take a small break. I feel like my lungs are gonna explode, Bondo said while trying to catch his breath from all the running. What the hell were those things? Manga asked, his head turning into a question mark. Demons? Demons straight from hell. Ibara said. Normally I'm not with the whole religious thing, but I have to agree with Ibara here, Kozai said. Clearly those are the obstacles Principal Niza sent to stop us, Kendo said. I feel like I've seen them before, Pony said, making a slight error in her speech. Really? Where? Aways asked. I don't remember. Pony shrugged. Sorry. It's fine, Kendo assured her. For now we need to figure out a plan. I say we stop running and cut 'em up, Kamakiri said. We killed those things easily enough, let's just kill them all and get to the middle of the forest. We have absolutely no idea how many there are of those things, Juzo pointed out. Not to mention we don't even know if we've seen every type of whatever those are. There was that weird orb thing, those tigers, some kind of griffins, and some weird underground dinosaur things. Sun listed. They can attack us at all angles, so whatever we do, we have to do it carefully, Kendo said. Suddenly Kendo was interrupted by a rumbling from above before a boulder slammed down in front of the cave entrance, plunging the cave into complete darkness. They found us, Manga shouted. We're sealed in, Bondo pointed out. Guys, Setsuna said as she saw yellow eyes from deeper inside the cave coming towards them. Kia. Suddenly ravagers swarmed them, attacking them with their claws and teeth. Ahoy! The class all tried to swat them away, but that didn't really do much. Ack! No one used their quirk. You might hit someone else, Kendo ordered as she got scratched and bit up. Ahi! Then what the hell are we supposed to deal with these things? Kamakiri asked while also getting attacked. Some of her classmates ignored the order. Kurwaro used his quirk and jumped into the wall, staying safe from the Ravager's attack, same with Tetsu and Monoma. While Yui just tried to use her quirk on whatever she could touch. It didn't affect living creatures, so her classmates were safe, she just needed to shrink the boulder blocking the entrance to the cave. However, as she swung her hands around wildly trying to use her quirk, she noticed something. It was working on whatever was attacking them. That meant that whatever was attacking them, presumably the same kind of things that were attacking them outside, wasn't technically alive, and thus she could use her quirk on them. While this was good to know, it didn't help her much in this situation, given she was fighting a swarm, but she knew who this could help. Yanagi. My quirk works on these things. Yui shouted. What? Yanagi was confused for a second before she realized that if Yui's quirk worked on them, that meant they weren't alive, which means she could use her quirk on them. To test this out, she activated her quirk on the things attacking her, forcing them off of her and suspending them in the air. It worked, and the Ravagers were powerless against her quirk. Still, she would need to know where the rest of them were in order to stop them. My quirk works, but I need more light. Yanagi shouted. I'm trying. Yui was still looking to the exit, and eventually she saw a sliver of light creaking out, and so Yui ran towards it and put her hands on the boulder, shrinking it down to about half her size. Light flooded the cave, finally allowing everyone inside to see. Immediately Yanagi used her quirk and stopped all Ravagers that were attacking everyone and brought them all together into a big ball. Kendo enlarged her hands, brought them on either side of the Ravagers, and clapped with all her might, crushing them all in one fell swoop. After that, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone but Monoma, Tetsu, and Kurwaro was covered in scratches and bite marks and were very much wishing for this exercise to be over already. Don't lower your guard. If they found our location, then they'll likely send more, Kendo told them. We need to move fast. Too late, Yui said as she looked outside the cave. What? Kendo ran outside to see what Yui was talking about, and when she reached the exit, she froze. Shit. Outside the cave was an army of sabers, creeps, griffins, beowulfs, borbatusks, King Taijutsu, and Ursa waiting for them, blocking their path completely. Oh, come on. Kozai complained as the rest of the class looked at the army they would be facing. Well, looks like Kamakiri's gonna get his wish, Sen said. Finally. Kamakiri seemed more excited than anything. A real fight. We are going to die, Yui stated in her normal monotone. Not on my watch. Kendo said, everyone get ready. Our goal is to escape. Staying to fight will only make more come to replace them. Cut a path through the monsters and let's get out. As Kendo gave her orders, onto the cliffside the cave of located in, looking down on them, was a hound. Not yet participating in the fight, just watching. Setsuna started the battle, raising her eyes into the sky to get a better look at the enemies, while Juzo jumped out in front, softening the ground, causing all but the Griffin S to sink down into it. We got 30 wolves, 13 bears, 10 boars, 20 little dinosaur things, 18 bird things, 20 tigers, and 5 big snakes, Setsuna reported as quickly as she could. Meanwhile, the Grimm were struggling with the softened ground. The Beowulfs, Creeps, Sabers, and Ursa were all effectively immobile, but the Griffin S just flew right at them, and the Borbatusks were able to curl into a ball and slowly roll through it, and the King Taijitus could swim through it. Juzo, when I say so, harden the ground. We can't afford to stay in one area. Kendo told him. Got it. Juzo nodded. Meanwhile, Pony and Rin kept firing at the Griffins, keeping them away from the group. Pony. Rin, keep the skies clear. Tetsu, protect them. Kendo ordered. Kamakiri, Monoma, take the snakes down. Shishida, Ibra, take on the wolves. Sun, Awaze, defeat the bears. Bondo, slow down the dinosaur things and the tigers, and me and Yanagi will take care of them. Everyone else, support the others. Juzo now. Juzo touched the ground, causing it to become solid, and trapping all the Grimm that had been stuck in the ground were now encased in it, immobile at least for the time. However, some were able to break through, those being the Borbatusk, Katis, Ursa, and Creeps, while the Beowulfs and Sabers were still struggling to get out. Rahu! Shishida charged forward as a beast and grabbed a Beowulf out of the ground by its head and crushed its skull before pulling up another one like a carrot and smashing it into another Beowulf. Borbatusk rolled at them at high speed, and Bondo jumped out in front and sprayed glue at them, causing them to get stuck to the ground. While the Borbatusk struggled to get out of the glue, Monoma and Kamakiri jumped over them and charged at the 5KTS. One of the snakeheads lunged at Kamakiri, but the hero student just barely managed to jump over the attack before flipping in the air and forming a blade on the back of his arm to stab it in the head. Rah! The KT roared out in pain as the head that got stabbed flailed about while Kamakiri hung on with his blade, digging it deeper into the Grimm. The other head lunged at Kamakiri, headbutting him so hard he flew off its first head. Kamakiri hit the ground, making a blade come out of his back that stabbed into the ground to keep himself from rolling too far. Meanwhile, Monoma ducked under one other KT's snakehead lunge and formed a blade to slit its throat. The head reeled back and flailed about while the other head took its turn to lunge at him. Monoma rushed to the side, and as the snake rushed past him, Monoma stuck his blade in its side and slit it all down its right side. Rah! The grim snake gave a weak roar as it fell to the ground and died. Meanwhile, back with the rest of the class, Bondo continued to glue the rest of the Borbitusk while Yui went in and touched them with her quirk, turning them all into tiny boars. Yanagi activated her quirk, picking up all the miniaturized boars and bringing them together on the ground and holding them down. Kendo then enlarged her fist and slammed it down on the boars, killing them all. Meanwhile, Pony and Rin had taken down 9 out of the 18 griffins, but the rest were diving down towards them, getting a bit too close for comfort. One griffin went for Rin and was about to perform a diving claw swipe on him when Tetsu got in front of him and took the hit, doing no damage to his steely body. Tetsu grabbed the griffin's leg and pulled it down, allowing Rin to get a perfect shot at its chest, killing it. Setsuna separated her hand from her body and carried a ways over to the Ursa where Sun was dealing with them. Ducked under one of the Ursa's claw swipe and then thrust his hand forward into the Ursa's chest, drilling into its body with his drill bit fingers until his hand came out the other end and the Ursa died, fading away into black smoke. 2 more Ursas charged at him while close together, and he knew exactly what to do. He dashed forward and kicked one of the Ursa's head into the other so that they were touching. At that moment, Setsuna lowered a ways onto the 2 of them and he fused their skulls together. Ara! Both Ursas roared as they tried to move around to attack, but kept tripping up as they couldn't move effectively while used. Meanwhile, Ibera used her vines to pick up some Beowulfs and hold them in the air, binding them so Shishida could tear them apart. Back with Kamakiri, a KT had wrapped around him and was now attempting to crush him, but that was a mistake, and Kamakiri made blades come out of all parts of his body that stabbed into the KT, killing them. Meanwhile, the sabers had finally escaped from the ground and started charging at Kendo at top speed. Yanagi activated her quirk and held up the sabers in the air, albeit barely, as they were approaching the limit of what her quirk could lift. Manga then came in and used his own quirk. Kaboom! The onomatopoeia for kaboom came out and floated towards the 5 sabers and exploded when it reached them. But that was just the first wave, as while the 5 died, 7 more charged at them. Komori jumped out and spritzed the area with water before jumping back. The sabers lunged at the students, but Kendo came in and slapped them aside. All 7 of the sabers got knocked on their side but quickly got up and were ready to retaliate. But they never got the chance, as suddenly mushrooms started growing all around their bodies, including on their eyes and in their throats, causing them to swipe blindly as they suffocated. It seems like they don't have too many issues with large groups, Izuka noted. He had already started writing whole notebooks worth of notes about both the security and the students. They have very interesting quirks. Indeed. I'm quite happy they've lasted this long without losing a single member of their class. Nisa said. Shall we see if they handle the level 3 Grim? Not yet, Izuka said. I want to see how they handle the Hound. Ah yes. That will be quite interesting indeed. Nisa chuckled, eager to see more from his students. Every member of Class 1B was completely and utterly exhausted. They finally defeated every Grim that had come at them and had regrouped in the center of the clearing. Ha! Told you we should have just killed all of them. Kamakiri gloated. You're assuming that was all of them. Kendo pointed out. They better be. Setsuna groaned. Because if we have to fight more of these, then ga. Suddenly Setsuna was picked up by her neck and slammed into the ground by an invisible force. Slam. 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 After getting slammed in the ground a few times, Setsuna was tossed at the rocky cliff so hard the rock cracked and Setsuna instantly passed out. What the hell? Manga shouted out in shock as everyone got ready to fight again, but none of them really knew where this enemy was. After a few moments, suddenly Yui felt something grab her by the back of the head and lift it up before being slammed down face first into the ground. Slam. 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 Much like Setsuna, Yui was slammed into the ground hard enough to crater it, knocking her unconscious. Damn it, can someone make it visible? Kendo asked. Komori charged forward and started spraying the area. She was then picked up by her face by this invisible force. However, she at least was able to activate her quirk in time. The invisible opponent was then covered in mushrooms, including in their throat, making it rather hard to breathe. It was then the Hound immediately became visible in its upright form and threw Komori away as it struggled to breathe. What is that thing? Kamakiri asked. I don't know, but at least Komori killed it, Manga said. However, that was far from true. Suddenly, the hound's chest started glowing orange before a stream of fire came out of its mouth, destroying all the mushrooms and clearing its throat. You guys need to stop jinxing things, Owaze told them. Komori, get away. Tetsu ran towards the mushroom girl as she was now far too close to the hound and completely defenseless. Unfortunately, he was too late as the hound turned its attention to the small girl and opened his flaming maw. Whoosh! The hound shot out fire at Komori, which engulfed her completely. Ahey! Komori screamed as she was set alight. Rah! Leave her alone. Tetsu ran in and punched the hound in the face, not doing much damage but pushing the stream of fire away from Komori. Meanwhile, Pony used her horns to pick up Setsuna, Yui, and Komori, bringing them to the rest of the class. 1B looked at their fallen classmates in horror as they were all very injured and completely unconscious. Their injuries aren't life-threatening, but they're still pretty bad, Kendo said after looking at them for a bit. Grr. I'm gonna kill that thing, Kamakiri said as it ran towards the hound with blades coming out of his body. Kamakiri, wait. Kendo told him, but she was ignored. Meanwhile, Tetsu punched the hound in the chest and his steel fist just sunk into it, not seeming to do much damage. The hound jumped back and got back on all fours before letting out a stream of fire from its mouth at Tetsu. Gah! Tetsu grit his metal teeth as he endured the flames. He'd been working on his heat resistance, so he could at least handle this much, although it did hurt a bit. The hound saw that its attack wasn't working, and so it stopped and took a second to think and analyze its opponent. It didn't get much time to do that though, as Kamakiri jumped in and delivered an attack from above with a blade coming out of his forearm. Die! Kamakiri shouted, dove down at the Grim. However, the hound simply caught his blade in its mouth. Kamakiri's eyes widened as he saw the hound's mouth glow and he realized he'd made a mistake. Whoosh! Ack! Kamakiri shouted in pain as he took a flamethrower to the face. He tried to retract his blade, but the hound bit down tight on it, making sure the hero student was stuck there. Tetsu ran forward and punched the hound in its armored face, but the hound didn't loosen its grip. The steely student tried to pry its jaw open, but that was ineffective. Tetsu, get out of the way! Juzo shouted as he ran forward before touching the ground and activating his quirk. The ground softened under the hound, causing it to suddenly sink in and lose its balance a bit, and its jaw loosened its grip for just a second, but that was enough for Tetsu to jump in and pull his classmate out. Kamakiri was not in good shape, his face was burned a lot and he was completely unconscious. Crap! Tetsu swore as he carried his classmate over towards the rest of the group. That thing is on a whole other level from the things we fought. Some pointed out. Well, at least now it's stuck, Cozy, I said. Dude, don't jinx it. Owaze scolded. What? It's stuck. Look at it. Cozy, I pointed at the hound who was struggling to move in the mud-like ground. What's it gonna do, fly out? It was then that the hound grew wings and flew out of the mud. The class looked at it in shock before Owaze glared at Cozy. I think it's adapting. Kendo pierced together. The more we fight it, the more it changes itself to counter us. The hound then flew towards them and let out another stream of flames. The class dodged in separate directions as the flames came down, splitting the class in two. Pony and Rin shot it with their quirks, but the scales simply were absorbed into its body, doing no damage, and the horns didn't do much more than that. The hound turned its attention to the fallen classmates who Pony had put down so she could focus on shooting it. It breathed another stream of flames around those students, causing the rest of their classmates around them to flee. The hound then grew another set of arms and dived at the fallen students, grabbing all of them in its arms before going back up into the sky and flying away. No! Kendo shouted out as most of the class was helpless to do anything here. Pony shot out 4 horns hoping that she could snag her classmates from the beast's arms. But when the horns got close, the hound's head turned around and shot fire at them, destroying the horns and allowing it to get away with the students. TCH? Damn it! Kowaro said. What's gonna happen to them? Bondo asked, fearful for his classmates. Well, this is an exercise thought up by you.A, so they're probably fine, Kendo said, calming down her classmates. They just failed the exercise. Well, that's a relief, Ibera said. Still, to think we'd have to face such a fearsome beast. It's like Monoma, but it doesn't have to touch people. And it doesn't talk. Cozy, I said. So in other words, it's better Monoma. Monoma gave him an irritated look. Why, you little dash? We need to prepare, Kendo told her classmates. We just lost 4 classmates to one of those, imagine if there are more? We can't be caught off guard like this again. A change of approach is needed. This isn't a race to get to the middle, it's a fight for survival. The hound is more powerful than I'd thought. Izuka said. In the end, it took out 4 of them, although they were already tired. Ah yes, it is a particularly nasty creature, isn't it? Nisa said. The power of adaptation is a very powerful ability. Combined with its unique physiology, I can see why my students would have difficulties defeating it. That being said, do you plan to continue going easy on them? Izuka paused for a moment before sighing. No, this is meant to be like a real break-in, alright. Switch to level 3 security. The remaining members of Class 1B were back on the move, rushing through the forest as quickly and quietly as they could. Stop, Kendo ordered, bringing the class to a halt. Kurwaro, scout the area. Got it. Kurwaro ran forward and jumped into a shadow. It feels like we're going in circles. Bondo groaned. I have to admit, it doesn't feel like we're making all too much progress without Setsuna, and the fact that we're in a forest and thus everything looks the same doesn't really help, Yanagi said. Come now. Don't despair, my friends. We are the great Class 1B of UA. Minoma told his friends. The greatest Class U.A has ever seen. We will get through this. Ego stroking aside, Minoma's right, if we give up hope then we've already lost, Kendo told them. We can do this, guys. It was at the moment that Kurwaro came back, popping out of the closest shadow. There are a bunch of those floating orb things up ahead. And to out left and right. But there's a path we can take northeast of here that clear. Alright, everyone, we're heading northeast. Kendo ordered. Eventually, the group made their way to another clearing, this one next to another cliff. I'm tired, Bondo complained as he tried to catch his breath. Yeah, I'm pretty tired too. Any chance we could take a break? Rin asked. Not here. We're too out in the open. Any one of those flying things could spot us easily. Kendo said. We need to dash. Rah! Screamed something from above. Suddenly 2 manticores dived down from the sky and got ready to attack. Like that. Kendo shouted. The manticores opened their mouths and started shooting fireballs at the class. Ahoy! Aways cried out in pain as one of the fireballs hit him and sent him flying back. Aways! Kendo shouted out in concern. Tetsu and Minoma got out in front of the class and defended the class from the fireballs. Kendo ran to Aways to check up on him. Aways! I'm fine. Ag! Aways groaned. He was covered in burns and had trouble getting up. Rin and Pony started firing at the manticores, but much like with the hound, this did very little to their thick hides and armor. I can't get through. Rin shouted. Tetsu, I need to get closer. Cover me. Sen shouted, getting behind. Got it. Tetsu said. The two started getting closer to the manticores, with the 2 beasts focusing their fire on Tetsu. Eventually, the 2 reached the monsters and then Sen jumped onto Tetsu's shoulders, using them as a springboard so he could jump onto one of the manticores' back. Sen found an unarmored part on its back and started drilling into it. Although its tough hide offered some resistance, he could get through it with enough time. Rah! The manticore was obviously not pleased by this and started thrashing about wildly. Sen had to hold onto one of its horns just to stay on as he kept drilling. After unsuccessfully trying to buck Sen off on the ground, the manticore took to the sky. And if that wasn't bad enough, the other manticore also took the sky, flying behind the one Sen was on, and started firing fireballs at him. Ah! Someone! Do something! Sen pleaded to his classmates. Fire at their wings. Kendo ordered. Rin and Pony opened fire once again, this time aiming specifically for the wings, which was hard with them flying around the way they were. However, with enough perseverance, they managed to shoot their wings enough to knock them out of the air. Juzo softened their fall. Kendo shouted. Juzo quickly ran out in front of them and softened the ground. The 2 manticores fell into the mud-like ground and quickly got stuck in it. Rah! Sen finally pushed through the hide and was now quickly drilling into the Grimm's insides. Ag hoa! The manticore roared as it started to die, its body fading away into black smoke. Pony sent out another horn to catch Sen by his shirt to keep him from falling into the softened ground before bringing him to the rest of the class. Good job, Senior, Kendo praised him. Now let's go. What about the other one? Sen asked, looking at the manticore that was currently struggling inside the mud. Leave it doesn't look like it can follow us, Kendo said. We need to get out of here before reinforcements arrive. And with urgency, Class B fled back into the forest. After a bit more running through the forest, it was clear that the class needed to take a break. All the fighting and running was taking its toll and they wouldn't be able to go on much longer if they didn't sit down for a while. Kendo found a particularly dense part of the forest covered in shade and they all sat down to take a rest. Oh, I hate Nizu, I hate him so much. Cozy, I said. I hate him and his smug little rodent face. Probably laughing his ass off as we speak. It's improper to say such things about your teachers. Shishida said. That being said, I can't disagree with you. Kurwaro, please take a look around the area, Kendo asked her classmate. Ugh. Fine. Kurwaro groaned before sinking into the shadows and moving away. These monsters only grow stronger the more we travel. Ibra pointed out. As if we're descending further into hell itself. Yeah, and we still haven't seen that dog thing in a while. Some pointed out. Ugh, don't remind me. I don't want to have to deal with that thing again. Aways groaned. It wasn't just stronger than all the other ones, it was smarter too, Kendo said. If we run into it, we'll have to throw everything we've got into killing it. Yeah, I'm gonna get payback for what it did to the others. Tetsu swore. Damn Setsuna, she had to go and get taken, so now I have to do all the damn surveillance, Kurwaro growled. He moved through the shadows created by the trees, looking around for Grim that his class might run into. And of course that means I can't take a freaking break, Kurwaro grumbled to himself. Because no one else can dash. Whoosh. Suddenly fire shot down from above, a few feet in front of Kurwaro, lighting up the area, dispelling the shadows, causing Kurwaro to pop out of the ground. What the hell? Kurwaro quickly got, and as he was about to dive for another shadow, he felt a cool hand on his shoulder, and he froze up in fear. He turned his head, and behind him was the hound. Oh shit. Kurwaro hasn't come back yet. Shoda noticed, looking worried. You don't think something happened, do you? No way. Manga said. How would those things even be able to see him? Unless he was talking to himself, none of them should have noticed him, Sen said. You know how slippery it is. I'm sure he'll be fine, Kendo said, not sounding too sure herself. Guys. Suddenly, from deeper in the forest, they heard Kurwaro's voice but didn't see him. More enemies are coming. We have to move now. The only safe path is straight ahead. Come on. What? Damn it. Everyone get up, it's time to move. Kendo shouted as she quickly ran up. The class got up quickly and made a run for it, going straight ahead like Kurwaro told them. Eventually, they arrived at a dead end. A steep cliff from where you could see the house from. Whoa. It's there. It's the center of the forest. Pony said with elation. That is a rather large house, Shishida noted. Guys. Focus. We just got backed up onto the edge of a cliff with monsters chasing us. Kendo pointed out before looking back at the forest. Kurwaro, get out here. A few moments passed and Kurwaro came out, unconscious and in the hands of the hound. Class 1B's eyes widened in shock and fear, and they all backed up a bit only to realize that there was a cliff behind them and backing up much further would cause them to fall off. It took out Kurwaro. Aways shouted. It must have got him while he was surveying the area. Kendo decided. And it mimicked his voice to lure us into a trap. Tetsu and Shishida jumped out in front, ready to fight it. However, the hound had other plans. Suddenly, the ground started to shake and a blind worm popped out of the ground, breaking up the ground on the cliffside and causing it to become unstable. The ground around 1B quickly collapsed and they started falling to the ground. Ahoy! They all screamed as they plummeted. Pony shot out 4 horns, putting 2 under her feet so she could fly and using the other 2 to catch Sen and Rin. Tetsu activated his quirk with Monoma copying it. Yanagi used her quirk to move some nearby rocks and grabbed onto them, allowing them to float slowly towards the ground. Shishida went full beast, hoping his bulk would protect him. Manga looked down as shouted boing, creating the physical word boing that went to the ground, waiting to catch him. And for Kendo, she enlarged hands and held them out in front of her. Then everyone hit the ground. Crash. Most of the class hit the ground hard. Pony was fine as she gently floated down on her horns, setting down Sin and Rin, who she saved from the fall. Yanagi floated down as well, and Manga bounced off his boing. Tetsu, Monoma, and Shishida took the hard fall in stride. It hurt like hell, but they were mostly fine. Kendo's hands took the worst of her fall, and she grit her teeth as she was almost definitely sure she bruised them. But it was worse for everyone else who had nothing to soften or slow their fall. Ugh! Kendo groaned as she shrunk her hands back down, feeling a horrible stunning pain in both of them. Oh, everyone? The class rep looked over her class. Of them, only Pony, Sen, Rin, Yanagi, Tetsu, Monoma, Shishida, Manga, and herself were still capable of continuing. Bondo, Shoda, Ibara, Kozai, Aways, and Juzo had all been knocked out by the fall. Damn it. Kendo cursed, blaming herself internally for having been tricked by that Grim. As the remaining members of the class recovered, suddenly the ground started shaking again, and a Geist in a rock golem body followed by 2 Deathstalkers and 2 Goliaths. They blocked their only way to escape, meaning they would have to fight them to get out. Monoma looked at the unconscious Juzo who had fallen nearby and touched him to copy his quirk before running out in front of everyone and touching the ground and softening it. The Grimm all began to sink down into the mud-like ground, with the Deathstalker becoming completely immobile while the Geist and Goliath slowly trudged their way towards them. Alright, our only way out is forward. Yanagi blind the golem thing and Shishida attack its face that looks like a weak spot. Everyone else focus on the elephants. Yanagi used her quirk to grab all the tiny pieces of rock that had come with them from the fall and brought them up the Geist's face, blocking its view. Shishida shrunk down again and turned to Pony. Miss Pony, could you bring me to its face? Okay. Pony said, shooting out a horn that Shishida grabbed onto as it carried him up to the Geist's face, who couldn't see him because of all the rocks in the way. Once Shishida was above the Grimm, he let go of the horn and went full beast and dived onto the Geist. Yanagi stopped blinding the thing so Shishida could land on its body. Shishida then grabbed both sides of its mask and started pulling as hard as he could. Grrrrrrrrr. It was hard, but slowly Shishida started pulling the Geist Grimm out of its stone body. The Geist brought up one of its stone arms over its face and smashed Shishida against its body. Gah! Shishida cried out in pain as the massive boulder smashed into him but grit his teeth and continued to pull the Geist out of the golem. Plus ultra. With the final cry, he pulled the Geist out of the golem and immediately crushed its head in his hands. Meanwhile, Rin was firing his scales at the Goliaths, which as with all the tougher Grimm did nothing. Pony also tried firing her horns at it, which was equally ineffective. Get me onto it, Sun said. Pony sent out another horn and Sun grabbed onto it and let him lift him into one of the Goliaths. He tried to drill into the unarmored spots on its back, but unlike the Manticore, he wasn't making a dent here. I can't drill through. It's too tough. Shishida jumped off the now falling rocks of the Geist's golem and onto a Goltatha's back and tried attacking it, but to no avail. We can't hurt it, Kendo realized before trying to come up with another plan. We can't run away when all the ground in front of us is softened like that. But if we unsoften it, they'll come straight for us. Then again, those things were slow even before we used Juzo's quirk on the ground. Maybe we could just run away. The class rep looked down at her fallen classmates. We have 6 down. Pony can carry 4 of them with her horns, but we'll have to carry 2 ourselves and that'll slow us down. Still, we don't have much of a choice. Monoma, turn the ground solid, we have to run, Kendo ordered. Monoma nodded and touched the ground again, turning it solid again and trapping the Grimm in the dirt. However, the Goliaths immediately broke out and the Deathstalkers were working their way out as well. Everyone run for it, Kendo shouted. Pony, grab whoever you can. Shishida grabs the 2 she doesn't. Pony did as ordered, grabbing Ibera, Juzo, Awaze, and Kozai with her horns and running past the Grimm with her friends. Shishida jumped down and grabbed Bondo and Shota and made a run for it as well. The Goliaths charged at them, but the class was able to jump out of the way in time. They were approaching the trees and it looked like they could make it. And then 3 bearing elves jumped out, blocking their path. Oh! Manga shouted. Rag? One of the bearing elves charged at Pony, jumping at her with terrifying speed before smacking her aside with its huge arm. Ahe! Pony cried out in pain as she was knocked aside like a rag doll, breaking her concentration and causing her horns to drop and her classmates to fall to the ground. Shishida dropped his classmates and charged at one of the bearing elves. Rah! The 2 clashed, locking arms as they engaged in a contest of strength. That Shishida was quickly losing. The Beringel shoved him to the ground and started punching him down into the dirt. Get off him! Tetsu Tetsu charged at the Beringel that was beating Shishida. Tetsu Tetsu, watch out! Kendo shouted to try and warn her classmate. Ha! Tetsu Tetsu turned his head and saw that a Goliath was charging right at him. OSH dash! Tetsu Tetsu couldn't dodge in time as the Goliath hit him in the back with its tusk, sending him flying. Aga! Meanwhile, the Deathstalkers were finally pulling themselves out of the ground and getting ready to join the fight. And while that was happening, one of the Beringels had jumped onto the weakened Pony and punched her in the face, knocking her out immediately. Monoma charged at the Beringel, still beating up Shishida using Tetsu Tetsu's quirk, intent on stopping it, making sure to watch for Goliaths, but something else came to stop him. Slam! The hound jumped down from the cliff, landing right in front of Monoma. Monoma only had a moment to look at it in horror before it grabbed his face and its hands glowed yellow. Ahoy! Monoma screamed as the hound shocked him with electricity which ran all around his steeled-up body, knocking him out as soon as it stopped. As Monoma dropped to the ground, the hound turned its attention to Yanagi, who stared at it completely terrified. She quickly reacted, picking up whatever was around, tree branches, rocks, whatever, and throwing it at the hound, which did absolutely nothing. The hound's arm extended, shooting out and grabbing Yanagi's face from a few yards away and giving her the same taser treatment Monoma got. Aghohehe! Yanagi gave out a ghastly scream as she felt electricity course through her body before it suddenly stopped and she lost consciousness. Meanwhile, Manga was running away from two Deathstalkers that were hot on his tail, only for a Barinjal to come in from the side and clothesline him, knocking him out immediately. Rin tried to shoot at Barinjal, but to no avail as the monstrous ape quickly grabbed him with both hands and started crushing him in its grip. Aghu! Sin gave a desperate charge at the hound and shoved his drill arm right through the beast. He took his arm out and saw that he made a huge hole right in its chest, and for a second he thought maybe he killed it. That thought was quickly proven wrong as the hole patched itself up as the hound regenerated in seconds. Kendo heard the screams of Sin getting tossed and knew she was now the last member of her class left. The Grim closed in on her, surrounding her with the hound staring her down. Did we ever stand a chance? Kendo wondered. As Izuka watched the last member of 1B go down, he gave his order. All right, bring them all to the infirmary. Quickly. They made it surprisingly far, Niza commented, having watched on his own seer that Izuka sent him. I honestly expected them to fall as soon as you sent out the level 3 Grim. But they didn't go down easily. No, they didn't. Izuka took a moment to think about all this. They got farther than I'd like, but at the same time it's a group of 20 UA students, so maybe that shouldn't color my opinion of this too much, and they didn't even make it to level 4. Then again, I don't want anyone to make it to level 4. I recommend we see what 1B has to say about the system and then we'll decide if it was adequate or not, Niza told him. I guess that's best, Izuka said. I just have to wait for them to wake up. Oh, Kendo groaned as she finally opened her eyes and light flooded in. Kendo immediately recognized that she was lying on a bed in some kind of infirmary. She sat up and saw her classmates laying on beds nearby, all of them having their injuries treated. Ow! Setsuna groaned as she too started to wake up. Did anyone get the number on that fucking bus that hit me? Various groans across the room could be heard as everyone started to wake up. Ah, what happened? Yui asked. Where are we? Kurwaro scowled. This doesn't look like the UA infirmary? Jizo pointed out. You in my house. Everyone looked to their left and saw Yami patiently staring at them while sitting in a small red chair. They all paused for a minute, noting his appearance and how similar it was to monsters they fought. You brought here after my Grim beat you, Yami explained. Wait, are you the one that made all those monsters we fought? Manga asked him, his head becoming a question mark. Yami nodded. My Grim. I make them with my quirk. It's very strong quirk. I would have to agree. Ibra shivered. To think a child could command such an army of demons. Wait, does that mean we got out butts kicked by 6-year-old? Kamakiri shouted. Damn, that sucks. Setsuna added. Many of the Class 1B members groaned at the humiliation they suffered, getting absolutely demolished by a boy who didn't look older than 10. Now everyone don't despair. Monoma said. Our defeat to this child is not the embarrassment you may think. It's not as if we engaged a child in 1 versus 20 combat. He sent an entire army our way. We fought hordes of terrifying beasts before we fell. Don't forget that. That does make it less embarrassing, Rin admitted. Kendo sighed, not feeling any of her frustration deplete. Still, we failed the exercise. No, you didn't, Yami said. Ha! Most of the class gave him confused looks. A kid, we were told to get here, and we didn't, Sin explained. Sounds like we failed to me. Yami shook his head. Niza said you can't fail. Because task was impossible. Eh? Shouted the entire class. It was then that the door opened and Recovery Girl came in. Yami dear, I told you not to disturb them while they were recovering. Sorry. Yami apologized. Got excited. I understand dear, but go wait with your father for now. You can hear from them later. Recovery Girl told him. Yami nodded and obediently left the room just as Momo entered. Yaoyorozu. Kendo gasped, shocked to see her here. What are you doing here? Let me guess. Class 1A was given the same exercise as we were, I bet you didn't get anywhere near as close as we did. Monoma gloated. And for that matter, thankfully Yanagi cut him off by using her quirk to hit him in the head with a nearby metal tray. Well, it's rather difficult to explain, Momo said. To start with, you are currently located in the infirmary of the Midoriya Foundation estate. Wait, Midoriya Foundation? Shishida paused. Wasn't that the foundation owned by the young man who was nearly assassinated not too long ago? That's correct, Momo said. The Midoriya Foundation is essentially a place for overly powerful children whose parents leave them for one reason or another are to be raised, such as Yami who you just saw. A place for OP kids. Okay, that makes sense, Setsuna said. But still, what's a member of 1A doing here? Weren't you guys on a trip? This is the trip, Momo explained. We were sent here to assist Midoriya after he fell ill. He is currently understaffed, so we're acting as temporary staff while also fulfilling our academic duties and training. And as temporary staff, it is also my job to inform you that Midoriya and Principal Nizu are waiting for you in the main office. If you want more of your questions answered, then you'll likely need to head up there. I can lead you if you'd like. That would be great, thank you, Kendo said. I think we'd all like to figure out what is going on. Momo led them all to Izuku's office, where Izuku himself was waiting for them at his desk, with Nizu also being present, having pulled up a chair beside Izuku, behind the desk. Yami was also present, sitting beside the desk, waiting patiently. Ah, Class 1B. Nizu greeted them. I'm glad to see you're awake. It seems Recovery Girl did another fantastic job. Ms. Yaoyorozu, if you would. Of course. Momo promptly left the room, leaving only Class 1B, Izuku, Yami, and Nizu. Well, then I suppose you all must be very confused, Nizu said. So allow me to start from the beginning. Class 1B looked at him attentively, finally ready for an explanation. As you may have heard, Mr. Midoriya here was the victim of an assassination attempt, Nizu explained. As such, he was looking to improve his security system. Using the grim little Yami over there creates as guards. Yami waved and Kendo gave an awkward wave back. And so he developed a new security system but had no way to test it. Nizu continued. And that is where you came in. Wait, so you used us as lab rats? Kamakiri shouted in outrage. No, of course not. Nizu laughed at the accusation. Being a lab rat only benefits one person, whereas this is mutually beneficial. He gets to test his security system and you all get experience. Experience? Korwaro scoffed. Yes, thought this you gained many new experiences, Nizu said. Experience in fighting multiple opponents, experience in fighting clever opponents, flying opponents, stronger opponents, fighting forest, being trapped. There is so much valuable information that can be gained from this exercise that your next class will be entirely about analyzing your time here and how you could have improved. Of course, we didn't expect you to actually complete the exercise. Izuku jumped into the conversation. Not to say you guys aren't powerful or skilled, you guys actually made it farther than we thought you would. It's just that some of the grim we have and the number we have them in is a bit much for most people. I'm honestly glad you didn't make it to level 4. The grim at those levels are brutal to say the least. Wait, level 4? Sin interrupted. What do you mean level 4? The level system was made so that way threats are taken care of appropriately. The deeper you get into the forest, the higher the security level gets and more dangerous grim get added. Nizu said. That explains why things kept getting harder the deeper we went into the forest. Kendo surmised. And we didn't even make it to the maximum level. Well, to be fair, you made it to level 3 out of 4, so you got pretty far, Izuku said to comfort them. To think there are things worse than that hellhound. Ibra shivered, as did the rest of the class. Ah yes, the hound, Nizu said fondly. That one was an exception, Izuku told them. The hound is an intelligent, ever-adapting grim. The only kind of grim that can think on a human level. It's probably one of the toughest grim Yami has ever created. But since it's intelligent and can adapt, I don't have to worry about accidentally killing someone, so it can act at any of the security levels. Well, thanks for the nightmares, Greenie. That thing will haunt my dreams for at least the next few months, Setsuna said bitterly. My apologies, Nizu didn't tell me that he wouldn't be informing you of what you'd be facing. Izuku gave a brief bow. Also, I would like to ask what you thought of my security system in general, and if you have any advice on how to improve it. How to improve it? Manga asked, shocked as hell. Who's trying to kill you? The U.S. Army. We don't know who is currently after Mr. Midoriya's life, as such it is better safe than sorry, Nizu added. Well, Kendo thought about it for a moment. I feel like the difference between your air troops was too big. The bird things were rather easy to dispose of, while the flying lions were far more dangerous. I feel like there could be something between the two that is both more numerous and more difficult to defeat. Something between the griffins and manticores. Izuku paused. Come to think of it, no new air-based grim are added in level 2. In fact, level 2 was actually had a somewhat disappointing performance. So maybe more kinds of grim can be added there? Yami jotted this all down on a notepad he brought, listening very closely to what everyone was saying. Other than that, everything seemed pretty solid, Kendo told him. I doubt anything other than an army of powerful villains could get through. Although having not seen level 4, I can't give you my full opinion. That's completely fair. Thank you for your input and thank you all for your time, Izuka said, opening one of his desk's drawers and pulling out a stack of checks. Excuse me. Nizu's expression didn't change, but he seemed but surprised and slightly displeased by this. This was not what we agreed upon. I said the same thing to you when you had them go into that forest blind. Izuka reminded him as he put the checks on the table. And you said, and I quote, but it's not what we agreed upon. Touché, Mr. Midoriya. Touché. Nizu replied. Oh sweet, we're getting paid. Kurorio was the first to grab his check with the others swiftly following. Oh man, look at how much this is. Setsuna said, admiring the check. This makes getting beat up by a giant dog almost worth it. Heck yeah. Thanks, Midoriya. Tetsu said. Are you sure this is okay? Kendo asked. This is a lot of money. It's fine, this won't even make a dent in my wallet, Izuku told them. And it's the least I can do after you helped test my security system. Yes, be very grateful for Mr. Midoriya's generosity, Nizu told them. That being said, the school day is coming to a close, so I believe it's time we took our leave. That would be for the best, Izuka said. Thank you all so much for your contribution to keeping my children safe. I know you'll all become fantastic heroes. Izuka had gathered up all the kids in his office, all except for Mu, Kai, and Fukunoko, for an exciting announcement. Alright everyone, as you know, Halloween is coming soon and I have plans for us to fully enjoy the holiday, Izuka said as he saw the excitement in the children grow. Firstly, since we'll be staying up late that night, the classes after Halloween will be suspended. Yahui! Fewer children cheered at that than you'd expect, but very few of them looked disappointed. Secondly, we'll be going trick-or-treating from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., Izuku announced. Yaha! Now all the children looked excited to some extent, except Fu, who couldn't care less. And when you all come back, there'll be a Halloween party with 1A with several different events, including pumpkin picking, jack-o'-lantern making, a maze, and of course a costume contest. Izuku continued. You don't have to participate, but if you do, you have to promise not to be upset if you lose. Understood. Izuka got nods all around, but some of the kids had a competitive look in their eyes, which made Izuku a bit nervous. You have the option to make your own costume, have someone else make it for you, or you can ask me to buy one for you, Izuka said, before looking at Shiruku. Shiruku, if someone asks you to make their costume, please do it for them. I'll add it to your allowance. Shiruku's eyes glowed as she imagined all the Halloween units she could summon on her gotchas. Yes, Daddy. I'll do my best. Alrighty then, any questions? Izuku asked. Kei raised her hand. What about Kai, Fuku, and Mu? Are they gonna trick or treat with us? Izuka sighed. Unfortunately no. Both Fuku and Mu decided not to because, well, they don't want to. And Kai can't come because, well, he's too big. So instead Kaminari and Mina are gonna watch Halloween films with him until the party. And they all will be attending the party. Yes, even Fuku. This will be the first time she's been in a crowd, so don't overwhelm her and try to make her feel comfortable. Understood. Once again more nods before Nara raised her hand. Who is going to be chaperoning us while trick-or-treating? Ken rolled his eyes. We're not babies, we don't need chaperones. Yes, you do, Izuku responded, much to Ken's dismay. You'll all be split up into groups and watched by myself, Achiko, Su, Ida, and Yaoyorozu. That makes sense, Nara said. Shiruku was the next to raise her hand. Who is going to be judging the contest? Izuka smiled. That is a special surprise that I won't spoil for you. Now, are there any more questions? No one raised their hand. Good. Halloween is in a week, so just take the time to get ready. Izuka told them. Now you're free to go. Immediately the children ran to go think of costume ideas. Absolutely not. Fu refused. Fu didn't really know what he wanted to be for Halloween. He didn't really have any plans for any kind of costume in particular. But when Kiba came into his room and made her suggestion, Fu instantly knew what he didn't want to go as. Please. Kiba begged, giving him the puppy dog eyes he had long since become mostly immune to. I have the perfect costume idea and it will only be complete if you go in this specific costume. And Kyosei would make it even more perfect. I am not an accessory, Kiba. Fu deadpanned, crossing his arms. And I happen to have some sense of masculine pride left in my undead body. Okay, how much is that pride worth then? Kiba asked him. Because there are some great Halloween banners right now and I'm sure you'd love the chance to summon on them, right? Fu grit his teeth as his mind went to all the games he could use that money on. Are you really going to make me sell you my pride? Kiba just continued to smirk, confident that she got him. Because she did. Interesting. I thought you would go with something more predictable. Shiruka said as she looked at Kiba's phone, which displayed the character she wanted to dress up as. Still, I never watched this anime, but the character looks like they fit you. They do indeed. This character is one of the only characters in fiction worthy of my admiration, and as such would be the only character worth dyeing my hair for. Kiba said as she was practically shaking with excitement. This has been my idea for a costume ever since I laid eyes on their anime. Which also brings me to Fu's costume. Fu sighed in the background, regretting letting Kiba drag him all the way over here. Just show her it already. Kiba excitedly showed Shiruku the next character, the character Fu would be dressing up as. Shiruku's eyes widened and she stared at the image for a bit in disbelief before turning to Fu, who was looking away from her, blushing more than she'd ever seen him blush before. Are you sure you want to dress up as them? Look, Halloween banners are up and she is paying me a considerable amount of money to wear that, Fu explained. You understand. You're an addict too. Shiruka gave him a sympathetic look. All right, as long as you're sure. Of course we'll also need a lot of makeup, a wig, and some props, Kiba said. I want these to be perfect. Fu groaned. Yeah, perfect. Really? Izuka said as he looked at the notes detailing Kiba and Fu's costumes and what would be needed to complete them. Fu wants to wear that? More like Kiba paid him to wear it, Shiruku explained. Ah, that makes more sense. Izuka sighed. That girl, at least I don't have to worry about her being financially independent. All right, well I can get pretty much everything here. The guns will obviously have to be fake though. Yeah, that makes sense, Shiruku responded. Also, have you decided what you want to be yet? Izuku asked her. Shiruka then, unexpectedly, frowned and her mood seemed to darken. I haven't. That's unexpected, Izuka said. He thought Shiruka would have loved this opportunity. What's wrong? Well, it's just, I want to make this special. Shiruku admitted, looking sheepish as her pale cheeks turned red. Normally during Halloween, I would just celebrate by making simple dresses based on ghosts or pumpkins. I never made a costume because... Shiruku gestured down to her lower body. But this year, it's my first Halloween with my family. I really want to make a costume, but... Shiruka paused. How do I make a costume when I look like this? I could make a scary costume like a ghost or a spider monster, but those don't feel like they match me, but they would match my body more than something like a princess or fairy costume. I don't know what to do. Nothing feels like me. Oh, Shiruku. Izuka got up and hugged his spider daughter. Your body isn't limited to dressing up as scary monsters. Yes, people can find your spider half to be rather frightening. But there's more to you than just that half. Your upper half has beautiful white skin and hair and mesmerizing eyes. Maybe you don't have to pick one or the other. Scary or pretty. Maybe the key is finding a way to combine the two somehow. Combine the two, Shiruka repeated as her eyes widened. It was then the dam broke. Suddenly dozens of ideas started to form in her head and the creativity block she had suffered was long gone. That's it. Shiruku was so happy she almost cried, looking at her father with a huge grin on her face. I know exactly what to do now. Oh, thank you, Daddy. Shiruka hugged him back, hard enough that Izuku could feel his bones creak. Ack! Shiruku! Use strength. Izuka reminded her urgently. Oh. Sorry, Daddy. I just got excited. Shiruka released Izuku from her death grip and immediately made a beeline for the door. I have to start making designs. I'll show you when it's ready, Daddy, you're going to love it. Slam. And she was gone. Once Izuka got over his bones almost being crushed, he smiled. Ah. This is the best part of my job. Fukinoko looked over her work that was splayed across her bed with dissatisfaction. No. Oh, why can't I get this right? Stupid, useless Fuku. Knock knock knock. EAP. Fuku jumped a bit when someone knocked on her door. Who is it? It's me. Shiruku. Shiruka said on the other side of the door. Can I come in, please? I want to ask you a favor. Oh, a favor. Fuku felt nervous. What kind of favor? I just want you to draw some things for me, Shiruku explained. Can I come in, please? Fuku hesitated. She didn't know Shiruku super well, but she did make her hoodies, and she loved her hoodies. This seemed like the least she could do in return. So after working up a bit of courage, Fuku opened her door. Shiruka crawled inside and gave Fuku a thankful smile. Thank you. You were the only one I could rely on here. I'll rely on me? Fuku blushed. I doubt I'm the best person for the job. Nonsense. Besides, Daddy, you're the best artist here. Shiruka pointed out. But I want to keep this a secret from Daddy. I don't want him to see my costume until Halloween. Oh, you wanted me to make you a costume? Fuku frowned and looked back at her own attempt at a costume on her bed. This of course drew Shiruku's attention as she looked at what Fuku was staring at. Is that a blue shirt? Ah! Fuku jolted when she realized what she did and quickly grabbed the shirt before hiding it behind her back. Don't worry about that. Let's just focus on your costume. But Shiruku ignored her and simply went up to her and grabbed the blue shirt, taking a closer look at it. It looks handmade. Did you make this? Fuku looked down at the floor, ashamed of herself. I know it's bad and it must be an insult to someone like you. I'm sorry for even trying. No. It's pretty good. Could use some touching up, a lot of touching up. But it's not bad. Shiruku told her. I just didn't know you liked to sew. I try it every now and then, it's just a hobby, Fuku said. Although I wish I was better at it. I wanted to make my own costume but I just can't seem to get it right. Well, then I'll help you. Shiruka offered. I'll help you learn how to make clothes and you can help me learn how to draw. Deal? Shiruku extended her hand out. Fuku looked at it nervously before taking a look at her incomplete costume and making up her mind. Deal. A week had passed surprisingly quickly and Halloween was finally upon them. 1A had gotten there early in the morning to do what was asked of them. Mina and Kaminari were already keeping Kai busy while most of the other members of the class worked to get the Halloween party set up. Of course, the exceptions were Achiko, Ida, Tsu, and Momo who were dressed up and ready to escort the kids. For some reason, there seemed to be a fantasy theme among all of them. Achiko was dressed as some kind of hooded mage complete with a wooden staff. Tsu was dressed as a barmaid. And both Ida and Momo were dressed as knights. Wow, you guys look great, Izuka said as he came down the stairs in the main hall to meet them. Oh, the woe. Achiko as well as the rest of her friends were shocked when they saw Izuka's costume. Now, one might expect Izuka to dress up as All Might. And if this were every other Halloween, they'd be right. But for this new and special Halloween, Izuka wanted to try something new. And thus his costume here was Pinhead from Hellraiser. Ahi. Achiko was speechless as Izuku walked towards them, looking just weird. This is not what I expected from you, Midoriya, Ida said, getting over his own shock. I don't anyone expected this from Midoriya, Tsu said. It is rather strange, Momo added. Yeah, I wanted to go with something different. New me, new kinds of costumes, you know. Izuka gave a nervous chuckle. Too much. No, it's just unexpected, Achiko said. Well, I guess that's what I was going for. Izuka chuckled. The kids should be here any minute, so I guess we just dash. All right, let's start the candy hunt, shouted Ken. Hey, wait up, doofus. Nara yelled. The two came down the stairs in their fresh new costumes. Ken was Omni-Man from Invincible. And Nara was just dressed as a witch. All right, we're ready to go. Ken said eagerly. What do you think of my costume? Awesome, right? It's certainly well made, Tsu said. Yeah, you look like a real superhero. Achiko praised him. Nara rolled her eyes. More like a super dweeb. Yeah, have fun dressing up as mass murderer, bro. Oh, come on, he had character development after that. Ken argued. He did a lot of great things. Doesn't make him not a mass murderer. Nara retorted with a smug smirk. Before their argument could progress much further, the next group of kids came downstairs. We're ready, Daddy. Kei came running down the stairs, followed by Eri and Kyoku. Kei was predictably dressed in a snake costume. Was it very creative? No. Was it very Kei? Yes. Eri was also dressed as something more predictable, a unicorn. Lastly, there was Kyoku who was dressed as Jason Voorhees. Yep. I can't wait to scare the heck out of people. Kyoka shouted with excitement as she waved around her fake machete. Are you sure that is an appropriate costume for her? Ida asked Izuku. Izuka shrugged. It's what she wanted to be. I'll look at you too. You're so cute. Achiko said, leaning down and hugging the two girls. Thank you. Kei giggled, hugging her back. You look great too, Achiko. Why yeah, Eri said, a bit more flustered about this. Then the next group of kids arrived. Dad, we're ready. Netsa shouted as he came down, followed by Yami, Yanda, Otoko, and Sanson. Netsa was dressed up as the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four. Unfortunately, the clothes had to go over the flames unlike how it was with the actual character, but if they tried to do it the other way then that would result in him setting everything on fire. Yami was the Grim Reaper, which made far too much sense. He was basically just wearing his own Aegis robe along with a plastic bone scythe. One thing to note was that unlike Izuku, where you couldn't see anything of his face as long as the hood was on, you could still see Yami's glowing red eyes, making it even creepier. Yanda was simply dressed up as a princess in a pink dress with a golden crown. Simple, but it made her happy. Otoko probably had the most simple costume. He was a ghost with a white sheet thrown over him and some eye holes coming out. Again, simple, but given his appearance, there wasn't much he could do, and unlike Shiruku, he didn't care enough to think about it. He was just happy to be here. There was also an argument that could be made that Sanson had the most simple costume, but also the most accurate. She was dressed as Rimuru Tempest. From that time I got reincarnated as a slime, particularly she was dressed up as his slime form, which was just a ball of blue slime with black lines for eyes, so all Sanson had to do was ask Izuku to dye her body that same shade of blue and then add some black pencils for the eyes. She was also staying in Rimuru's standard blob shape, although she was bouncing around even more than normal. Wow, you two are really scary, Su said to Otoko and Yami. They're simple but effective. Thanks, Yami responded. Otoko cinched thank you as well. What do you think of my costume? Yonda asked everyone, doing a twirl to show it off. It's pretty, Achiko thought. A princess, such a simple yet appropriate costume. Ida thought. Cute, thought Su. It's refreshingly childlike. Momo thought. You look even more like a princess than normal. Izuka smiled at her. Yonda smiled at him and hugged his leg. Cute, everyone thought. Come on, we're going to make everyone late, came Kiba's voice from upstairs. We wouldn't have to worry about that if you didn't take so long adjusting the wig, came Fu's voice. Well, it had to be perfect. If you're going to do this, then you might as well do it right, Kiba argued. You have a point, Fu sighed. Hearing them coming downstairs, Izuka quickly turned to the kids. Now kids, I don't want you making fun of each other's costumes, especially Fu's. If you do, then half your candy goes to Fuku and Mu. What's Fu's in particular? Su asked. Did Kiba force him to dress up as something embarrassing? You'll see, Izuka sighed. A few seconds later, Kiba and Fu came downstairs. Everyone looked at Fu in shock, and both Ken and Kyoka had to hold in their laughter. Kiba was dressed as Alucard from Hellsing Ultimate, getting everything right down to his black clothes and red coat, to his red hat, to his glasses. Heck, she even dyed her hair black and had fake guns to match. And Fu was dressed as Sarah's from Hellsing Ultimate. This included her yellow uniform as well as her skirt and stockings. Kiba had even used makeup to make his skin more in line with the characters, as well as colored contacts and a wig. Oh my god. Achiko forced down a laugh and gave the boy a sympathetic look. Well, it's certainly well done, Ida responded, completely stunned by this. That girl. Su facepalmed, shaking her head at Kiba's antics. Wow, Dad, did we get a new sister? Kei asked Izuku. Yeah, when did that happen? Netsu added. Fu sighed. No, it's me. Eh. Both Netsu and Kei gasped, having not quite figured out it was Fu up until this point. Fu. Oh wow, your costume is amazing, Kei praised. I didn't even know you were a boy, you're so pretty. Yeah, I thought you were a girl too, Netsu added, giving him a thumbs up. Nice job. Fu's eye twitch. Thank you. How much did Kiba pay you to wear this? Nara asked him, already guessing how the vampire girl managed this. A lot, Fu said, before turning his gaze to Kyoku and Ken, who were still trying not to laugh as hard as possible. I don't want to hear a word about this from either of you. Hey, is someone going to talk about MY costume? Kiba pouted. You look cool too, Kiba. Net surprised her. I like your hair. Yes, it looks good in black. Yonda added. Humph. That will do for now, Kiba said. Then they heard more footsteps coming down the stairs, belonging to the last child left. Everyone looked up as Shiruka came down. Shiruku's costume was vastly more unique than anyone else's, not being based off a character or basic Halloween type of thing. It was completely original. Her costume looked to be based on a shrine maiden, but darker and with some spider-based elements. The normally white upper part was instead black, with some red thrown in. She had a hood which went down to her back like a cape, and while the part around her head was the same black and red, the part going down her back was obviously webbing and had a web-like design. The long sleeves, instead of having red lines along the edge of the sleeve, instead now it was red spiders. And instead of the lower half being red, it also looked like webs, much like the back of her hood. And the red bow around her waist had 6 frills on it, 3 of both sides, making it reminiscent of a spider. She even had a small staff with a red spider with frills for legs at the end. Heck, she even painted some red patterns on her spider half. It was a very intricate and well-designed costume that had everyone in awe. Wow. Kei gasped, looking at her sister with stars in her eyes. You're beautiful, Yonda said in astonishment. So cool, Netsa said. Wow, that looks amazing, Shiruku, Nara praised. Now I'm starting to wish I put more effort into mine. It's so pretty, Eri said, seemingly mesmerized by the costume. To think something of such high quality could come from a child, Ida said, before giving applause. Bravo, bravo, Such hard work and dedication. It's truly an amazing costume. Not just that but the creativity on display, Momo said as she got a closer look at the costume. It's astounding. Shiruka had a huge grin on her face as this time tears of joy did come from her eyes. Thank you. I worked really hard on it. The spider girl then turned to Izuku, who smiled fondly at her. Did I find the right balance, Daddy? It's perfect, Izuku said, leaning down and hugging her once again. But I didn't do it alone, Shiruka said as she broke the hug and looked up the stairs. I had some help from a certain someone. There was a long pause before more footsteps could be heard coming down the steps. And down came Fuku in a Link from the Legend of Zelda costume. But it wasn't some slapped-together green tunic and hat, no, this was a perfect recreation of the Link outfit as seen in Breath of the Wild. Starting from the ground up, she had on his brown boots and light-colored pants. Next was the iconic blue tunic, which was decorated just like how it was in the game. As well as having 3 belts, 2 around her waist and 1 across her chest, 1 to hold the quiver full of arrows on her back, 1 to hold her Sheikah slate, and 1 to hold her master sword, scabbard, Hylian shield, and bow. She was also wearing an undershirt that sleeves showed outside of the tunic and the brown glove on her right hand with her other hand exposed. Lastly, she even dyed and styled her hair to look more like Link from that game, including a ponytail, although her bangs were noticeably shorter than Link's. One last detail was that her left hand was painted the Triforce of Courage that Link obtained in Breath of the Wild's sequel. Once again, everyone was amazed, both by the detail and work that went into the costume, the fact that Fuku was wearing it, and the fact that Fuku had shown up. Wawa. Kei ran up to Fuku the moment she sheepishly arrived down the stairs. Fuku, you look so cool. Why do? Fuku seemed surprised by this sudden praise. I mean, me and Shiruku worked really hard on this and I was really happy about how it turned out, but I was also nervous that I missed something or it just didn't fit me. So I was really nervous about how I would look, and I'm talking too much, aren't I? You're fine, Shiruka said, going over to Fuku and holding up her left hand to her face. Remember this? Right, courage, Fuku said as looked at the painted-on Triforce fragment. You look great, Fuku. Eri said, eager to support her. I definitely didn't expect you to wear something this dashing. Yanda said. Sansan made a hand come out of her body and gave her thumbs up. Ah, you guys. Fuku blushed intensely. I think you look good too, Fuku, Fu said. Thanks F dash, Fuku froze when she saw Fu. Fu. Yep. Fu sighed. Oh, I didn't know you were into that kind of thing. Fuku said. I mean, I'm dressed as a guy so I'm not going to judge. Fu didn't even bother to respond to that. Having lost all will to resist at this point and just going with the flow. And that's not all. Fuku is going to go trick-or-treating with us. Shiruku announced. Really? Izuku's eyes widened in shock before he turned to Fuku. And you agreed to this? Fuku nodded, looking back at the mark on her hand. I am the brave hero of the wild. Link. I can't just hide away like a coward while I have the Triforce of Courage on my hand. It wouldn't make any sense. So I decided that I would go out and have fun with all of you. Eri and Kei looked at her with amazement and everyone else was surprised by this as well. Achiko went to Izuku and whispered in his ear. Are you sure about this? What if her quirk goes off? She's gotten a lot better control of it after we started training, Izuku said. And she knows what to do if she feels overwhelmed. Right, Fuku? Fuku nodded. Run away so no one else gets hit by the gas. That's right, Izuku said. Well, then I don't see any issue with her going. Yay! Kei cheered before hugging Fuku. I'm so excited. Eri joined the hug and once again Fuku's face was redder than a tomato. Alright everyone, it's time to split up into groups. Izuku announced before turning to Achiko and company. Could you guys spread out please? They all nodded and spread out amongst the room. Okay, so Group A will be going with me, Izuku said. Group A will be Shiruku, Eri, Fuku, Kiba, and Fu. Next will be Group B with Achiko. This will be Kei, Kyoku, and Otoko. Group C will be with Su. This group will be Yami, Yanda, and Sansan. Next will be Group D going with Ida and Yayorozu. This group will be Netsu, Ken, and Nara. Why does our group have 2 people watching us? Ken protested. Because I know you're the most likely to try and pull some Halloween trick that'll cause everyone a lot of headaches. Izuku deadpanned. Yeah, that's fair, Nara admitted. Don't worry, I'll do my part to make sure he stays out of trouble. Thank you, Izuku said. Alright everyone. With that out of the way, time to trick or treat. Ran Damuo hated Halloween. Every year, brats would come up to his door in cheap store-bought costumes and interrupt whatever he happened to be doing at the time. So he was in a pretty bad mood when he was just sitting on his sofa watching TV when the doorbell rang. Ugh! Ran groaned as he got up and grabbed the bowl of candy sitting next to him. It wasn't like he could ignore them. His wife always got on his case if he ignored even a single trick or treater. And she always knew. Ran went up to his door and opened it. And boy, this was not what he was expecting. There were 5 little girls and 1 teenager outside his door. Now that part wasn't the unexpected part. The teenager was probably just one of these kids' older brother who was forced into chaperoning their little sister and her friends. It was their appearances that were off-putting. The first thing he noticed was the girl whose bottom half was a spider. Now Ran wasn't a quirkist. He thought people who judged others based on something they couldn't control were scum. That being said, he was, like many, arachnophobic, so seeing this girl scared the shit out of him at first. However, knowing that this was wrong, Ran quickly focused on her upper half, which actually was easier than you'd think because the costume she was wearing, some kind of spider-themed shrine maiden, was both creative and rather pretty. So if the goal was to make a costume so good it took people's attention off her spider body, then he mentally applauded the tailor who made this. There was also a girl that was dressed as Link. That wasn't very notable in and of itself. What was that she was shaking in terror? Seriously, someone help this young girl. The other one that really boggled his mind was the teenager who was wearing a Pinhead from Hellraiser costume. How did this kid even know about that character? It's so old. All the other girls were less mind-blowing. 2 seemed to be dressed up as some kind of anime characters and 1 was dressed up as a unicorn. Trick or treat, yelled all the kids except the one dressed as Link. Wait a minute. Ran looked at the little blonde girl. That was a male voice coming from that one. You what? He wasn't gonna think about it. Maybe they just had a deeper voice, or maybe they were a young crossdresser. Who was he to judge? Try trick dash. The one in the Link costume was struggling hard to try and say trick or treat. Is she gonna be okay? Ran asked the teen. It's her first time. The teen explained. First time trick or treating? Ran asked. The teen winced. That, amongst other things. Now, what the hell did that mean? Come on, you can do this. The unicorn girl encouraged the shy one. You're the hero. You can't back down now. The black-haired anime girl added. You can do it, said the blonde girl who Ran was half convinced was a boy. Courage. Remember, you have the Triforce of courage. The spider girl picked up the shy girl's left hand, which had a gold triangle on it. All right. See courage. The shy girl psyched herself up. Try trick or treat. Yeah, you did it. All the girls, the teen, and maybe 1 boy, still unsure about that, cheered for her before looking at Ran expectantly. Oh, I hear. Ran took candy out of the bowl and gave it to the kids, giving some extra to the shy one because it seems like she should get some kind of reward for overcoming whatever was going on with her. Thank you, said the children and teen before taking their leave. Well, that is probably the most interesting thing that'll happen to me tonight. Ran thought. XXXXXXXXXX. Ding dong. Ran sighed and put down his popcorn bowl, paused his movie, grabbed the candy bowl, and got up to answer the door for what felt like the millionth time today. He opened the door. Okay, another weird one. Altogether, there were 2 kids, 1 teen, and 1 adult. Maybe they were a family? Who knows? Now most of them were normal. The teen was dressed as some kind of wizard. The adult had the most basic, uncreative bedsheet ghost costume. One of the girls was wearing a normal snake costume. Mind you, she did have snakes for hair, but that was likely part of her quirk, so he would try not to stare. But the final girl, no older than 8 maybe, is what gave him pause. Now when you pictured a little girl on Halloween, what kind of costume would imagine they would have? A princess? A fairy? A fairy princess? Maybe a female pro-hero? Something along those lines, right? What probably won't come to mind is what the girl is actually dressed up as, Jason fucking Voorhees. Machete included. Why would her parents let her watch those movies? Why would they let her dress up as that mass murderer? Why would she want to dress up as that mass murderer? Honestly, this was probably the scariest costume he'd see tonight, if only for the implications. Trick or treat, said the snake girl, with the other girl staying silent, only raising up her, presumably, fake weapon and holding up her candy bucket as if she were mugging him. Not wanting to anger the small girl, Ran quickly put some candy in both of their buckets. But then, much to his surprise, the guy dressed as a ghost also had a bucket of candy, holding it out for him to fill. Ran gave the man an odd look. Aren't you a bit old for this? He's 7. The teen girl told him. Ran's eyes widened in shock, and he was sure his jaw fell to the floor. Oh, that was a 7-year-old. What on earth were they feeding this kid? By the time he got to his teens, this kid was gonna be like 10 feet tall or something. Hey, sorry about that. Ran laughed nervously, putting some candy in his bowl. It's just he looks older than he is apparently. The tall boy then proceeded to poke his hand out of his costume and, maybe he'd been a bit too quick to say his costume was uncreative. He then started using what he assumed was sign language, which he, unfortunately, didn't understand. He's saying it's okay. It happens a lot. The teen girl said. Thank you for being understanding. Happy Halloween. All of them then started to leave except for the Jason girl who stayed there for a minute, standing there, breathing loudly. It was creepy as hell. Can I help you? Ran asked. The girl then dropped the fake blade and reached out behind her, pulling something out of the back of her jacket. It was another, slightly smaller machete, this one much more real-looking and covered in dried blood. What the? Ran fell backward in fear, dropping the candy bowl in the process. Ahoy! The girl just laughed maliciously before putting the weapon away and stealing the candy bowl before running after her group, laughing evilly as she went. After recovering from that shock, Ran quickly got up and closed the door. Never would he ever tell anyone about the time he was mugged by a child. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Ding dong. Ran once again paused the TV, got up, grabbed the second bowl of candy because the first one was gone and went to answer the door. He opened it and... Ahoy! Ran screamed the moment he laid eyes upon one of the kids. Turns out the Jason girl would not be the scariest thing he'd seen today. This kid was dressed up as the Grim Reaper and it was a damn good costume. A completely black robe with pieces of white bone all around it. Their face completely shrouded in darkness except for two bright red dots that were presumably their eyes. He was also carrying a bone scythe that did not look like it was made of plastic. The only parts of their body Ran could see were their hands, being unnaturally pale with pitch-black fingernails. This is exactly what he'd imagined death as an elementary school student would look like. And just when he thought that was the worst of it, he heard a voice in his head. Are you all right, sir? He heard a female voice in his head. Hey! Ran screamed again. Who said that? Why are you in my head? Sir, please calm down, said a green-haired teenager that looked to be chaperoning the children. The voice you heard is this little girl's quirk. She can't turn it off and she can hear your thoughts. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Ran screamed in his mind. How am I not supposed to worry about it? That's extremely worrying. Wait, she can hear me. Oh God, what do I do? Ran tried to calm himself down and took note of the full group. There was the aforementioned kid dressed up as Death and the teen girl dressed as a barmaid. Aside from them, there were two more children. One was dressed as a princess and presumably was the one who was hearing his thoughts. And the last one was a slime. A small, round, blue slime with black pencils that seemed to mimic eyes of some sort. He honestly couldn't tell the gender of this child, assuming they had one. Still, Ran was not a particularly strong person. And so when faced with a mind reader and Kid Death over here, he did at what he thought any reasonable person would do. He tossed the candy bowl into the hands of the teen and ran back inside. Once again, he would never tell anyone of the night in which he was scared out of his wits by children. Twice. At this point, Ran didn't even bother watching anything anymore. It was late, so soon enough the hordes of kids would be going back home and the trick-or-treating stuff would be done with. Ding dong. Ran got up, the third bowl of candy already in their hands as they opened the door. Oh, one of the kids was on fire, sure. Why not? That might as well happen. This group consisted of 5 people, this time there being 2 teens and 3 kids. One, as was stated, was on fire, wearing a mostly blue costume with a 4 logo on it. Then there was a kid dressed as some kind of superhero, be it real or fictional he didn't know. And the last one was a plain and simple witch. The 2 teens were dressed as knights. Weird how many groups of teens chaperoning kids while also wearing fantasy-based costumes he'd seen tonight. Trick or treat, the kids said, holding out their buckets which were full of candy. Well, besides the kid that was on fire, this group seemed relatively normal. At least he wouldn't have to deal with anything weird this time. Splash! And suddenly, the kid in the superhero costume pulled out a hidden water pistol and shot him in the face with it. You know what? Ran was done with Halloween this year. And so the man simple placed the bowl outside his doorstep, closed the door, and went back inside. Izuku and the rest of his group started walking back to the house with Kiba and Shiruka carrying the huge load of candy they got. Well, I'd say this was a pretty successful Halloween, Izuku said, before turning his attention to Fuku, who was still on edge but looked extremely relieved to be going home while also sneaking glances at the candy pile. And I'm so proud of you for coming outside like this, Fuku. And on top of that, you only had to let your gas 7 times. Yes, we are all extremely proud of you. Kiba smiled at her. You made a fantastic debut to the outside world. And in a truly stunning costume. It's not that great. Fuku blushed, hiding away her face. It's nothing compared to Shiruku's or Kiba's. I think it's just as good. Eri told her. You did a great job making it. Maybe not as good as Shiruku's, but that's an unrealistically high bar, Fu told her. You worked really hard today, so just accept the praise. Indeed. Today you showed true courage facing off against terrifying monsters such as depression, anxiety, and crippling fear. Kiba told her. You gave a battle worthy of the character you mimic. Yeah, courage. Fuku looked down at the Triforce on her hand and smiled a bit. Yeah, I was brave. I really went trick-or-treating. Outside. In the city. That's right. And we're all so happy you did. Izuka said, giving her a pat on the head. Although I was rather surprised when I saw you choose to dress up as Link of all characters, Kiba noted. I didn't expect something so daring. Do tell, what exactly made you want to be Link in the first place? Well, I've always admired characters like Link. Able to face off against any kind of danger. Explore the world. Have adventures. It's the same reason I admire you, Lady Kiba. Fuku explained sheepishly. I'll never be as brave or strong as you or Link, but if I can pretend to be them, even for just a little bit, it makes me feel stronger. Fuku looked down at the Triforce on her hand. I know this is just some paint that I put on my hand, but if I don't think about that, then it really does feel like it's giving me strength. Like I have a goddess pushing me forward. There was a small pause before Fuku turned to look at the group. One day I want to be strong enough to do these kinds of things without shaking in fear. So thank you all for supporting me. It means everything to me. And one day I will be able to do things without clinging to you guys for help. I promise. Everyone smiled at her, happy to see her growing so much. Well, I think this occasion is deserving of a reward, Kiba said, rubbing her hands together mischievously. Everyone, it's time for congratulatory head pats. Wait. No. Fuku gasped as suddenly the other kids started approaching her and she pulled out her master sword. Stay back. I have the power of the goddess and anime on my side. Unfortunately for her, neither of those things would save her. With it now being late into the night, all the groups had finally returned to the house. So, Kyoku, Ken, would you mind explaining these? Izuka cornered the 2 children holding up the water pistol and machete respectively. You brought a real machete? Ken asked, looking at Kyoku with a shocked expression. I didn't hurt anyone with it. Kyoka pouted. No, but you did mug people out of their candy. Izuka gave her a stern look. How did you think that was possibly an okay thing to do? Kyoka didn't answer, only looking away guiltily. Izuka sighed. How did you even get this? I found it. Kyoku obviously lied. You found it, Izuka repeated skeptically. Where exactly did you find it? Around. Kyoka replied. Kyoku, whose memories did you mess with to get this? Izuku asked, having figured her out by now. Momo's, Kyoki muttered, slumping over sadly at having been found out. When did she actually? I suppose given her quirk me not remember it makes sense, Momo said. Kyoka, what have I told you about using your quirk on people without their permission? Izuku asked her with an upset expression. Not to. Kyoka answered despondently. And so why did you do it anyway? Izuku asked her. Because I wanted to scare people. Kyoka moped. I thought it would be fun. Izuka sighed. And there are ways to do that without carrying around an actual weapon. You could have asked me if you wanted to give people a Halloween scare. Sorry, Daddy. Kyoku apologized, lowering her head in shame. Izuka sighed, look, for now, we'll be taking half the candy you got, which is more than fair considering you stole a lot of it. We'll discuss further punishments tomorrow. For now, I want you to enjoy the party, understood? Yes, Daddy? Kyoka sighed. Izuka then turned to Ken. Honestly, not the worst thing you could have done. Still shouldn't have done it, and you know that, but not too terrible. Sue, punishment-free? Ken asked hopefully. Not quite. You're losing a quarter of your candy. Izuka told him. Ah, man? Ken groaned. Be grateful that's all the punishment he's giving you, doofus. Nara scowled at him. Anyone else would have done something much worse. Ken pouted. He knew that was true, which is why he wasn't making such a stink over it, but it still sucked. Although to be fair, he was still getting a lot of candy. All the kids had pulled in an obscene amount of candy. Each one of them filling more than a single bucket. Kyoko had gathered the most because she stole it. Yami also got quite a bit more than the others, most likely because out of fear. Fuku and Shiruka would likely be tied for third in candy gathering. with both of them likely getting more candy because of the quality of their costumes as well as Fuku getting some pity candy. Wait a minute, Sansan, Fu, and Netsu don't eat candy. Achiko pointed out. What are they gonna do with their candy? Well, I'm going to give Fu's to Mu since he didn't get any, Izuku explained. And the rest will be given out as a prize to the winner of the costume contest and jack-o'-lantern making contest. What? Ken shouted in shock. There was a prize for that. You never said anything about that. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. You win a contest, you get a prize, Nara said smugly. And it wouldn't have made a difference anyway, no one's beating Shiruku at the costume contest. Shiruka smirked, feeling confident in her chances. Well, we'll see, Izuka said. Now let's go outside. Class 1A as well as a few workers have been setting up the party for us and I think you'll like what they've done. Izuka was right, the children were in fact very pleased. Class 1A had done a good job putting up holiday decorations all over the place as well as setting up tables and whatever else would be needed for a party, including setting up tables filled with various snack foods all themed after Halloween. However, the most impressive work was done by the people who Izuka specifically hired to help change the place up. Firstly, the gardens, which had been mostly empty up until now, was now changed into a full-on pumpkin patch with full-grown pumpkins included. And second was the pool, which had been filled with dry ice, making it give off a spooky mist. It really was astounding how much could get done in so little time thanks to quirks. Man, you really spooked this place up. Ken praised. We tried our best. Kaminari said. All of Class 1A joined in the fantasy theme, with costumes ranging from witches to knights to adventures. Heck, Kirishima had a dragon-themed costume. Cool. Sansan bounced around happily. And that's not all, Izuka told them. I also invited some extra guests. Then they heard more people enter the backyard. That must be them now, Izuka said. Everyone looked towards the door at the 6 guests that came along. In front of them was Amai, dressed up as Samus in her armor, excluding her helmet which she was holding. Behind her was Koda and the wild pussycats, all of whom were in their hero costumes, and Koda was wearing cat ears over his hat and looked about as happy about that as you'd expect. Yami. Amai ran over to the cloaked boy, greeting him cheerfully. You look absolutely terrifying. Yup. Yami nodded, knowing there was no actual fear or malice behind her statement, only an objective fact. Amai quickly spotted Fuku and gasped. Link. She went over to Fuku, who gasped and froze up. That's such a great costume. Amai praised as she looked over the whole outfit. So accurate too. You must have worked really hard on it. Why yeah. Fuku stuttered. Why yours is really good too. I like your arm cannon. Thank you. Amai said, holding up the fake weapon with a smile. Meanwhile, Kyoku walked up to Koda and giggled. Nice ears. Koda's eye twitched. Hey, I watched the Friday the 13th movies too. What was Jason killed by again? Oh right. Water. Kyoko's eyes widened as she quickly realized where this was going. Ah! Kyoka screamed as she ran away from Koda, who started shooting water blasts at her while chasing her. Koda! Mandalay called out to him about him to chase after him to try and stop the child, but Izuka held out his hand to stop her. She needs to learn to stop antagonizing people, Izuku explained. And getting a little wet isn't a bad way to learn. He's got a point. Pixie Bob agreed. I suppose so. Mandalay sighed. Thank you for inviting us over, by the way. Koda was very happy to get the invitation. Although he was less happy about having to dress up for the occasion, Tiger added. I can see that, Izuku noted. Well, hopefully he'll forget about it as the party goes on. At least he didn't get it as bad as Fu. Yeah, looks like little Kiba pulled him into something. Ragdoll giggled. Wait, where is Fu? Mandalay asked, not seeing the boy around. Standing next to Kiba, Izuka said, pointing over to Kiba and Fu, who were talking to Amai. Wait, that blonde girl is Fu. Pixie Bob shouted in shock. Damn, he looks good in a skirt. Never would have figured him for trap material. Please don't refer to any of my kids as trap material. Izuka deadpanned. Please don't refer to anyone as trap material. Mandalay deadpanned. Meanwhile, Fu heard all of this as he blushed with embarrassment even more. Well, looks like almost everyone is here, Izuka said. Except for Dash. Thump. 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 Kai walked in, eagerly joining his other siblings in the festivities. Hey everyone! You're back! The giant boy came in with devil horns on all of his heads, which were a bit small for him, however, they were still huge. I'm here for the party. I've been waiting for this all day. Kai said eagerly. Well, alright then, the only person we're missing is Mu, Izuka said, before feeling a tug on his pants. He looked down and saw Mu, dressed as a shy guy from Mario. Oh, never mind, Izuka said. Let the party begin. Heck yeah. Mina cheered. All right everyone. Time to start the pumpkin picking. Toru yelled out as all the kids got around the new pumpkin patch. Remember, these will be the pumpkins you'll be using to make jack-o'-lanterns out of. So pick wisely. Kiba immediately dashed towards the largest pumpkin, one about as large as her body. Using her immense strength, she lifted the thing over to her head and took it away. Ken, not to be outdone, slammed down on his Omnitrix and turned into 4 arms, picking up a similarly sized pumpkin and taking it. Fu didn't even move from his table, instead using Kyosei to grab a moderately sized pumpkin. Something to note is that to go better with the costume, Kyosei turned red instead of black. Sanson also wanted a big pumpkin, so she bounced over, made a hand to pick it up. However, it was too heavy and the pumpkin didn't budge. After a bit of struggling, Sanson heard some haughty laughter and looked over to the source to see Kiba's smug face looking at them. Oh? Is the mighty Sanson having issues? With something I did so easily? Kiba asked, looking and sounding smugger than ever. It seems perhaps lifting strength seems to be a weakness of yours? Sanson made one of those anime irritated symbols appear of her head before looking back at the pumpkin and trying to figure out how to move it. Then she had an idea and she made a light bulb appear on her head. Sanson then flattened herself and went under the pumpkin before raising it and bringing it away. And as Sanson dragged it away, she extended a part of her and shape-shifted it into Kiba's head, sending her smug face right back at her. Kiba glared at Sanson and Fu rolled his eyes in the background. Mu quietly took a small pumpkin and went to his table. Likewise, Eri, Yanda, and Kyoka took smaller pumpkins, not really wanting to carry any of the bigger ones. Kei took on the medium-sized pumpkin, struggling a bit to take it away, but happily doing so. Shiruku, despite having the strength to take a larger pumpkin, took one of the smaller, medium-sized ones, while Fuku struggled to bring one of the larger medium-sized over to her table. Netza had on gloves, so he was able to carry over a medium-sized pumpkin to his table. Nara and Otoko picked smaller pumpkins along with Koda and Amai. And with everyone's pumpkins gathered, now it was time to start carving. Fuku shyly approached Sato, who smiled as he saw her get closer. Seeking you. Fuku tried her best to ask for his assistance while Sato waited patiently. Can you help me with my jack-o'-lantern? Of course. Sato gave her a light pat on the head. Let's get started. Can I join? Mu said, speaking so quietly that they almost didn't hear him. Amai went over to Yami. Want to work together? Yami nodded and the two got to work. Lady Kiba, do mind if your loyal servants step in and offer you some assistance? Mina asked, with Toru right behind her. Of course, Kiba responded happily. But just so you know, I won't tolerate any slacking. Of course, Lady K. Toru said. Some of the other kids went to ask for help while others worked on their pumpkins by themselves with careful supervision to make sure they didn't hurt themselves or do something wrong. After everyone had finished up their jack-o'-lanterns. All right, then, since Kai couldn't participate, he'll be judging the jack-o'-lanterns, Izuku explained. I'll do my best, Dad. Kai said excitedly as he eagerly approached. Everyone, I'm gonna rate your pumpkins. Starting with Ken, Kai leaned down all 3 of his heads towards Ken's creation. The jack-o'-lantern had the symbol of the Omnitrix carved into it, and the fire lighting it was green. Izuku had given them some materials which would allow them to change the color of the fire. Oh, like your watch. It's really cool. Kai praised. And it's green. I love green. A+. Ken puffed his chest out, looking extremely smug. Kai moved his heads to look at Nara's next. Nara's pumpkin had a cat face carved into it with a pink flame illuminating it. It's a cute kitty. Kai noted excitedly. It's cute. A+. Nara smiled at him and gave Kai a head pat. Thanks, Kai. Kai giggled, enjoying the head pat for a second before moving on to the next kid, Sanson. Sanson had carved Rimura Tempest himself into the jack-o'-lantern, lit by a blue flame. It matches your costume. A+. Kai graded. Is he just going to give everyone A+, S? Kaminari asked. Kai moved on to Yami, whose pumpkin had a strange emblem on it with some sort of eyeball in the center, surrounded by lines in a circle, Salem's emblem lit by a bright red flame. Spooky. Kai praised. How did you come up with it? Yami shrugged. Saw it in my dreams. Cool. A+. Kai graded. Yeah, he is, Izuku answered. This pattern did indeed continue as Kai moved on to all the other kids' jack-o'-lanterns. Eri red-flamed apple lantern, Kei's green-flamed snake lantern, Kyoka's scared-faced black-flamed jack-o'-lantern, Otoko's white-flamed ghost jack-o'-lantern, Yanda's golden-flamed crown lantern, Shiruku's black-flamed spider lantern, Mu's red-flamed shy guy lantern, Fukunoko's blue-flamed Hylian shield lantern, Amai's red-flamed Mario mushroom lantern, Kiba's red-flamed bat lantern, and even Netsu's idea to stick the lantern on his head. Heck, even Fu's and Koda's generic lanterns got A+S. And so now that literally everyone got the same grade, it seemingly left them at an impasse. Well, Kai, it looks like you gave everyone the same grade. Izuka stepped in, not surprised by this at all. Sorry, they're all just so good. Kai apologized. Don't worry about it, son, Izuka said, patting Kai's leg. Do you happen to have a favorite? Kai took a minute to think, looking over all the pumpkins once again. So hard, I like Fuku's. Huh. Fuku gasped as froze up in shock. Congratulations, Fuku. Kei ran over and congratulated Fuku along with Eri. I'm not happy about my loss, but at the very least, I lost to a worthy opponent. Kiba said, taking this surprisingly well. Amai was slightly upset about losing, but she also did really like Fuku's lantern, so that softened the blow. Ken was the most upset about losing and was actually about to say something when his sister grabbed onto his shoulder and whispered into his ear. Let her have this, or so help me, me and Kiba will make sure you don't see the light of day. Now Ken was pretty confident in his strength. But he was not confident enough to try and fight both his sister and Kiba at the same time, so he wisely shut his mouth. Now everyone, it's time for the costume contest, Izuku announced. That also means I'll finally be announcing the judges. Suddenly, they heard the back door open again. And here they are now, Izuka said. Into the backyard came 3 pro heroes. Nizu, dressed in his usual suit but with devil horns on his head, which was very appropriate if a bit lazy. Midnight, who was dressed as a ghost, or rather, it was a quickly made ghost costume to cover up her actual costume, which was not appropriate for this event, to say the least. And lastly was the symbol of peace, All Might himself wearing a Frankenstein's monster costume. Greetings, children. I am here, All Might announced. All Might, shouted many of the children in shock. Ahaha. All Might laughed as many of the children flocked to him. No way. The number 1 hero. Ken looked up at All Might with stars in his eyes. He's even bigger in person than he is on TV. Netsu said with equal amazement. Izuku went over to Nizu and Midnight while the children were distracted by All Might. Thank you all for coming. And thank you especially Midnight for not, you know. Well, I couldn't refuse a chance to amaze some cute little kitties. Midnight giggled. To tell you the truth, I didn't have many plans for tonight. For whatever reason, I don't get invited to many Halloween parties. Nizu explained. I think they just don't want to tempt fate. Izuka thought. Well, I think we should get onto the contest then, don't want to make All Might stay in that form any longer than needed. Alright, everything is set, it's time for the contest to begin. Midnight announced as she, Nizu, and All Might sat behind the judges' table looking up at the stage. Can the first contestant, Kiba dressed as Alucard from Hellsing Ultimate, come on stage? With that, Kiba immediately ran on stage, showing off her costume as well as her model guns. Oh my, what a cool costume. Midnight cooed. In reality, she thought it was adorable, but that was not what Kiba wanted to hear. I love that you dyed your hair. Wonderful devotion. Yes, it's about as accurate as you could be, Nizu said. All 3 judges had pictures of the character the child was dressed as. No detail was overlooked. You can see the amount of effort that was put in on both your part and the part of the tailor. All Might praised. Kiba smiled, happily taking in all the praise and living it up in the spotlight. However, Midnight said, if I had to nitpick, and as a judge, your hair is a bit too long for the character. Yes, and I must say, while the clothes do suit you, your small stature does take away slightly from how intimidating the character is supposed to be, Nizu explained. Wow, these two are really getting into this. All Might thought. Overall, it was done about as well as could be expected, but it held down by some very minor details that would be difficult to solve. Midnight said. I give it a 9 out of 10. An 8 for me, Nizu said. Seems fine to me. I'll give it a 10. All Might judged. All Might then leaned down and whispered over to the other judges. Aren't you guys thinking about this a bit too hard? Not at all, Might. Nizu laughed. We must give our 100% in everything we do. Even this. Plus ultra and all. Meanwhile, Kiba pouted a bit but tried not to look upset. She knew it would be kind of petty to get worked up about this, and so she accepted the few points taken off of her costume with grace. That leaves you with a score of 27 out of 30. Midnight announced. Very good, sweetheart, a wonderful start. Well, next year I'll do even better. Just you watch. Kiba vowed as she exited the stage. Alright, now on to the next contestant. Who dressed as Sarah's from Hellsing Ultimate? Midnight announced. Fu walked on stage, grumbling about being forced into this with a slightly red face. The curly cross-dressing boy reluctantly showing off his costume before allowing Kyosei to come out as a red tendril, adding to the costume's accuracy. My, the character accuracy is quite astounding. Of course, excluding the inclusion of breast, that is. Midnight giggled as the normally expressionless boy became more and more embarrassed. Perhaps Kyosei could help with that. It was then Fu felt Kyosei start to come out of his chest, and he immediately squished him back into his body. Don't you dare? Midnight was giggling like a madwoman back at the table at how adorable this was. Come now, don't tease the poor boy, he clearly doesn't enjoy this. All Might told her. Well, that's a lie. Yami thought from the side. I must also praise the accuracy and all the work put into hiding his gender, Niza said. The makeup work and impeccable wig make it impossible to tell he's a boy. Guys, come on. All Might said out of sympathy. Well, it's a very, very nice costume that you, pull off very well. Fu sighed. Thank you. Well, I give it a 9 out of 10. Would have been a 10, but no breast. Midnight teased. An 8 out of 10 for me, Niza said. 10 out of 10. All Might judged. Have to give credit to the Plus Ultra makeup. Kiba smiled from the side, taking a bit of pride in this. After all, it was her idea and she had done all of the makeup and wig work. She had tried to get him to attach fake breasts, but Fu refused, even when she offered to pay more. That gives you the same score as your sister. 27, Midnight said. Makes sense because you're just as cute. Fu grit his teeth as he could hear Ken and Kyoka giggling in the audience as he exited the stage. Alright, next is Yami dressed as the Grim Reaper, Niza called. With that, Yami walked on stage, his red eyes staring into the souls of the judges. It is quite a chilling design, Nizu admitted. Even though it's a child, his appearance would make even a pro hero's skin crawl. It's like his eyes are drilling into me. Midnight shivered. Very impressive. I think there are many villains who'd sell their soul to look half as terrifying as you, young Yami. All Might laughed. Very good. Captures the Halloween spirit just right. Although honestly, I think the fake scythe brings it down a bit. Midnight said. It just reminds me that it is in fact a costume. Ah, I see what you're talking about. Niza nodded. If it was just the robe, your naturally terrifying self, then I could believe that you were some actual incarnation of the Grim Reaper. I can kind of see that. All Might said, taking a closer look at the scythe. In that case, I would give it about an 8. Midnight said. I personally would score it a 9, Nizu added. Ugh, 9. All Might would have given it a 10, but he had a feeling that given all the splendid costumes tonight, he would have to heighten his standards, otherwise everyone would get 10s. So that puts you at 26. Slightly lower than the other two, but still a very good score. Niza told him. Yami shrugged. He only really participated because Amai suggested it. He wasn't too invested in how he did in the contest. And so he unceremoniously exited, making way for the next person. Alright, next we have Amai as Samus Aran. All Might announced. Amai eagerly ran onto the stage. This time she had her helmet on and aimed her arm cannon around at invisible targets to better show off her costume. Very nice. Chibi little Samus. Midnight cooed. Every detail is accounted for, a very convincing costume overall. However, it does have that plastic shine that makes it seem a bit fake. Yes, that is indeed a problem. Nizu agreed. It's a small detail, but it goes a long way in making it feel real. With that said, everything else is so great that I think I'll only deduct 1 point. 9 out of 10. Midnight said. I agree. 9 out of 10. Niza said. Yes. 9 out of 10. All Might agree. And that brings your score up to a 27. Tied for first place so far. Midnight told her. I felt a twinge of disappointment but quickly shook it off and bowed. Thank you all for your time. And with that she exited the stage. On to our next contestant, Fukunoko as Link. Midnight called. And with that they all waited as Fuku slowly walked on stage, trembling slightly with fear and anxiety. Hi, Fuku said, trying her best not to give in to her fears and collapse on stage. Hello dear? Midnight said with a sweet costume. Won't you show off your costume for us? Fuku was struggling to remember what to do when out of the corner of her eye she saw Shiruku gesturing for her to use her bow. Oh, yes. Fuku took her bow as well as an arrow from her quiver, then took aim at a nearby branch, striking a dynamic pose in the process. Okay, Fuku, focus. Breath. Fuku took a deep breath and focused all her attention on her target. She felt the world around her fade away until all there was the branch. Twip. Thunk. Fuku let loose her arrow and it flew into the branch, lodging the arrow into the wood. Oh my. Showing off a talent as well as her costume. Very nice. Midnight praised. And it's a character-accurate skill, I'm gonna have to bump it up a point for that. Very impressive display. About a tricky thing to use, so to show such skill with it at such a young age is very admirable. All Might praised, giving her applause. I agree wholeheartedly. Niza nodded. I think you have a future in Kyudo. Why you think so? Fuku stuttered, blushing intensely at all the praise. We know so, dear. Midnight said, giving her a reassuring smile. Now as for your ranking. To put it simply, your costume is utterly perfect. I can't find a single fault in it. Easily a 10 out 10. 9, Nizu added. The hair is a tad bit too long. I'll have to give it a 10. All Might said. I think the issue with the hair is so minor in comparison to the character-accurate skill she just displayed. That brings you up to a 29. The highest score so far. You should be proud. Niza told her. What? Fuku was shocked by how well she was doing tonight. First, she won the jack-o'-lantern contest and now she was getting at least second place here. Was she actually talented? Fuku's mind was blown and she walked off stage while completely out of it. Alright, for our last contestant we have Shiruku in an original costume. Midnight said. Shiruku scuttled on stage, spreading her arms and waving around her staff and showing off her costume. Oh my, what a beautiful costume. Midnight praised. Such wonderful color work and design, and it fits your unique body so well. I can feel all the thought and hard work put into putting this together. Indeed, when it comes to hero costumes, it's quite easy to tell how much thought and heart was put into each one of them. Niza said. And while this isn't a hero costume, the same applies here. Not to mention the originality. Coming up with something truly original is difficult in this day and age, but you pulled it off beautifully. And one advantage of coming up with something original is that you have full control over what the costume looks like. All Might added. Meaning we can't take away any points for character and accuracy. Overall, a truly splendid costume. 10 out 10. Midnight judged. Agreed. 10 out of 10. Niza said. No complaints here. 10. All Might judged. And with that you received a perfect 30. Making you the winner of the competition. Midnight applauded her, along with Nizu and All Might. Everyone else applauded her as well, including the other contestants. Alright everyone. The party will continue for another hour before coming to a close. Izuku announced. Enjoy. And as such, the children, 1A, and the teachers enjoyed the party, eating and talking away into the night. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, share the video, and support the original writer. See you in the next video.